No title cards start our story. Instead, we find breath itself. Breath moving over the waters. Breath stirring the very dust we are made of. That breath travels down the centuries. This library we call the Old Testament is actually humanity's oldest collection of voices trying to understand our purpose. These voices are fierce and fragile, poetic yet raw, filled with the lore, the legends, and the deep longing of our shared search. Here lie 1,000 years of our desert memories, woven together by scribes who never knew they were mapping the eternal question of our existence. This is where our search begins. Before you and I dig deeper into why we exist, please subscribe and like this video. Your support helps other searchers find us. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from as we explore this journey. Now let's begin. As we examine these ancient words, we find they speak different languages but carry the same frequency of human questioning. It is the clash between the divine and our fragile human nature, violent, mysterious, and raw. This search offers no safety or easy comfort, yet it mirrors our own souls. In Hebrew, we call it the Tanakh, an acronym for the three paths of our search. Torah, meaning instruction, Nevi'im, meaning prophets, and Ketuvim, meaning writings. Later Christians rearranged this collection, calling it the Old Testament, as if our past could be dismissed. But for us today, this search remains alive in the present. It never stopped speaking to our existence. These words grew organically born around ancient campfires as we huddled together asking who we were in royal courts and on fragile scrolls. We kept these stories alive by committing them to memory through generations of survival. We chanted them, embedding them deep within our collective soul. Some of these fragments exist from before we even invented written alphabets. These ideas completely transformed our understanding of human history and time. This text did not emerge from a quiet, sterile study. It was forged at the violent crossroads where our early civilizations fought to survive. Egypt, Babylon, Assyria, and Greece all rose and fell around a tiny strip of land where we struggled to understand our place in the universe. Our world was already old when these texts began. We had already built vast cities, invented writing, and watched our own creations crumble to dust. We built towering ziggurats and watched pyramids cast long shadows across the desert sands. We traded copper and ideas along busy routes, desperately seeking meaning. We saw gods in everything, worshipping the sun, the rivers, and the storms, fertility goddesses and storm gods. Into this crowded, noisy spirit world, a quiet whisper changed everything. A voice from the wild desert. One invisible creator who could not be bought with statues, but wanted a covenant with us. Relationship, not religious ritual, became our foundation. This was a revolution. At first, this voice spoke only to wanderers, to simple shepherds and barren women. Our epic journey as a people began with just one lonely family. But like a seed, our story grew. It branched into a great nation, broke into kingdoms, scattered us into exile, and finally bloomed into our poetry and law. The earliest sections, the Torah, form the backbone of our origins. These are Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Together, they write our origin story, explaining reality itself. Earth, sky, stars, and our very morality are born here, a cosmic drama of our existence. Next, the historical books, like Kings and Judges, read like our ancestors' private journal. We celebrated victories and suffered broken promises as kings rose and fell like waves. Then, the prophets shattered our peace. They did not just tell stories, they screamed, they wept, they warned, and they pleaded with us. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and the 12 minor prophets who were anything but small in their fury. Their visions confronted our reality with thunder and riddles. They spoke of justice like burning fire and hope like rain on our dry ground. Then we find the writings. Ecclesiastes, our ancient philosopher in black, shouting that life is meaningless, yet still trying to find joy in our brief existence. Job screaming at the heavens from the ashes. Psalms singing our heart's deepest desires. Proverbs giving us practical wisdom to survive. The Song of Songs, a love poem celebrating our earthly passions. Together, these books form a massive chorus of our searching souls. Not a neat formula, but a beautiful, fractured tapestry. Our ancestors argued, mirrored, and responded to one another. Sometimes the divine seems unreachable, speaking from fire. Other times he walks with us in a garden, in the cool of evening, asking us questions like a father. Sometimes he heals our broken hearts. Sometimes he hides, and once he flooded our world. Other times he kneels beside a childless woman to offer hope. This divine force is not abstract, but deeply personal to us, sometimes terrifying, sometimes tender, but always involved in our struggle. For our ancestors, this text was not mere myth. It was our survival memory written in blood, bread, and song. It recalled our rescue from slavery in Egypt, of laws carved in stone, of weeping by the rivers of Babylon, and rebuilding our shattered lives. These memories defined us. We were once lost strangers, the text reminds us, so we must love the stranger as ourselves. Our history and morality became one. It is tempting to view this as just a book of fables, but it mirrors our flawed nature. Abraham lies, Jacob deceives, and Moses rages. We see our own struggles here. We watch David scheme with deadly consequences, and Solomon build temples, then turn to idols. Yet this messiness reflects our own raw search for purpose. The text never sanitizes us. It exposes our flaws fully. Our true quest is not about human perfection, but finding a persistent divine presence. Generation after generation, we repeat the same cycle, calling covenant, rebellion, judgment, forgiveness, and renewal. We move in a spiral rather than a straight line. Even as we recorded our sacred search, tension and debate shaped which books we accepted. Other writings sparked debates for centuries as we discovered edited and restored scrolls. Our sacred answers did not arrive fully formed. We curated, protected, and copied these records by hand in candlelit corners. By the time the Second Temple stood, our core scriptures had reached completion. Still, our search remained open and alive even as Greek philosophy began circulating through our ancient world. Soon Rome marched across our lands like an iron giant. Though the prophets fell silent, their ancient words kept guiding our quest for existence. These texts shaped our laws, philosophy, and politics, scripting our revolutions. For centuries, we copied them tirelessly. We studied, whispered, and chanted them in dark caves and catacombs. Today, they still stamp our art, literature, courtroom oaths, and protests. Its words defined our kings and prisoners, pilgrims and prophets. Honestly, this is not an easy story to face. It was never meant to be easy. But it understands our human condition, speaking to our longing, our losses, and our deep exile. It speaks to our joy, betrayal, and the heavy weight of waiting. Our history begins with breath and concludes with a tense pause. It is a collective holding of breath before the storm. Let us begin our search. At the start, there was no sound, no light, no shape, just an endless void and a breath waiting to stir. Then a word broke our silence: "Let there be light." This opening sentence sparks not just our story, but our entire cosmos, born from a peaceful voice rather than violent chaos. We translate the Hebrew word bara as create, but it means more. It speaks of forming us with deep intention, shaping our reality through speech alone. This first chapter unfolds like poetry across 6 days of rhythm repetition and rising motion. Day 1 brings light to our world. Day and night part like fruit split open. Day 2 divides the waters, carving out the vast dome of our sky. Day 3 brings dry land, where wild plants sprout on their own. Day 4 places guiding lights in our heavens. The sun, moon, and stars are set to mark our passing time. Oceans swarm with fish, skies with birds, and land animals roam freely. Finally, we are shaped in the divine image, born not of chaos, but of speech. We are crafted by a mind that perceives order and pronounces it good. 7 times we hear this phrase. Then a holy rest. Creation stops, leaving only completion. This tells us more than how we began. It tells us why we exist. It reveals a home crafted with care, shaped by wisdom, and anchored in deep purpose. We are no accident. We are intentional. We are good. But the second chapter tells a different beginning, with no grand cosmic expanse. There is no voice from above, only a rising mist. We see earth dust and clay, shaped by hands. A garden instead of a globe, he forms us from the dust, breathing life into our nostrils. We awaken not just to exist, but as living souls, called Adam. Not a proper name yet, just a creature fashioned from Adamar the ground. We are placed in Eden, a home of sheer delight. Trees grow there, holding secrets of our life and knowledge. But we were alone. So from our side, another was formed, not from dust, but from within, bone of our bone, flesh of our flesh, an equal partner, not a servant. Together we stood naked and unashamed in this intimate beginning. No cosmic architecture, just our soil, breath, trees, and companionship. 2 stories of our origin side by side, one cosmic, one deeply personal. One starts with light, the other with soil. One names us as image bearers of God, while the other shows us walking with Him. Both stories complete each other in our search. They were written in an ancient world already shaped by powerful creation myths from Babylon Akkad and Sumer. In the Babylonian Enuma Elish, our world begins with violence as warring gods clash for supremacy. Marduk slays the dragon Tiamat, carving up her body to form our sky and earth. In the Akkadian Atrahasis, we are fashioned from clay, and a slain god's blood created merely to labor so the gods can rest. In Egypt, Atum speaks us into being from the waters of chaos, a theme shared in Genesis. Yet our story feels different. Other ancient cultures explained our existence through blood battle and conflict, but Genesis tells us something else. We were made in peace by spoken words for rest. It was a radical claim. Our existence is good. We carry a divine image, and our earth is a temple, not a battlefield. This is why our cosmic origin is structured like a temple construction. 6 stages of order lead to a holy 7th day of rest. Just as ancient temples were finished and filled, our world was made for divine presence. So our home concludes with rest. Not laziness, but completion. Even our rhythm of evening and morning forms a sacred liturgy. Time itself becomes sacred. We no longer separate the divine from the everyday. Our ground is holy. Our time is holy. Our breath is holy. Our labor reflects the Creator, and our rest honors the pattern. We are not divine, but we are far more than mere dirt. We are formed from dust, yet filled with holy breath. To be human means walking this strange tension, earthbound yet image-bearing, mortal yet meaningful. We are small yet chosen, but our place is not secure. Our story pauses on a warning: we must leave one tree untouched, the knowledge of good and evil. We didn't just want facts, we wanted control. Eating that fruit was our first bid to define right and wrong on our own terms, silencing our Creator. The stage was set for our fall. But for now, paradise remained whole. These two opening stories of our history present our first clues. One showing a cosmos built on divine rhythm. The other paints a garden of breath beauty and our very first limits. These tales are neither science nor fantasy. They don't ask us to calculate the age of the stars. Instead, they force us to ask, who made us? And why do we exist? What is our purpose? And what happens when we walk away? These core human questions will echo through our entire sacred history. Through all our future exiles and struggles, the foundation of our search is laid. Order out of chaos, clay given breath and a choice we must make. Soon we will face exile. But first, a quiet whisper. In that beginning, we lived in effortless peace, surrounded by abundance. Animals walked beside us. Great rivers watered our home. We knew no death, no fear, and we walked naked without a single trace of shame. We were placed into this quiet world, not born, but carefully shaped from the dust. We were intentional vessels made to hold life. Divine breath filled us. Our original purpose wasn't to offer sacrifices or build massive monuments, but simply to care for our home. We were given responsibility, but with one absolute boundary. The fruit wasn't poison, but the rule was clear and unbending. We could enjoy everything except that single tree. Crossing that line meant death would enter our reality. It wasn't a threat, it was a warning. Yet the tree stood within reach. This was our freedom. Without a real choice, our obedience would have meant nothing. Then we were no longer alone. We found our counterpart, bone of our bone, an equal partner, and a mirror of ourselves. Together we walked those paths, sharing the duty to multiply and care for the earth, naked, unashamed, and completely whole. Then came the voice. Not a loud roar, but a soft, challenging whisper. Did God really say? The tempter didn't order us around. Instead, he made our limits look like deprivation, framing obedience as blindness. He promised that our eyes would be opened, and the fruit looked beautiful. The tree promised wisdom, and our desire woke up. We took it, we ate. There was no struggle, no real protest at all. Our collective silence was deafening. Our eyes were opened, but we didn't find secret wisdom. We only saw ourselves naked, exposed, and deeply ashamed. We stitched leaves together to cover our bodies, trying to hide. Then we heard a sound we had never known before. Divine footsteps approaching. In the cool evening breeze, the voice called out, "Where are you?" Not out of ignorance, but because we needed to face the truth and answer. Our first confession wasn't pride, but terror. We were afraid. Fear entered our collective soul, not as a direct punishment, but as the natural cost of our new knowledge. Our innocence was gone, and so was our closeness. The question, "Who told you that you were naked?" carried a heavy, layered truth. It was our own actions that ruptured our world. Then we started pointing fingers, blaming the woman and blaming the serpent. Nobody took responsibility. The consequences mirrored our choice. The earth, which had fed us so freely, would now fight our efforts. Bringing new life would bring us pain. Working the soil would become a struggle to survive, and the whisperer was cast down to crawl. Yet we were clothed not in leaves, but in animal skins. Life was taken, blood was shed. Covering our shame now required a sacrifice. Our shame now demanded death. We were sent away into exile, not out of vengeance, but to create a necessary distance. A flaming sword now guarded eternal life. Immortality in our broken state was too dangerous, so we stepped outside and began anew. We bore children, raising a farmer and a shepherd. They brought their offerings, but only one was accepted, while the other was turned away. Jealousy drove us to murder. As innocent blood cried from the dirt, the question came, "Where is your brother?" We answered with a lie. Another exile followed, marked for protection but barred from returning. We built cities. Our civilization began with a desperate search and a murder. Generations multiplied. A few of us walked with God, but most walked away. Violence filled our world, and our growing corruption brought grief to our Creator. Not anger, but grief. Then came the great flood. Only Noah found favor, building an ark to shield the remnants of our broken world. For 40 days and nights the waters rose. All seemed lost, until a dove returned with hope. Land emerged, and a rainbow sealed a promise. A new covenant was established, yet we fell right back into our old patterns. We spread across the earth and built a massive tower for our own glory. We wanted to make a name for ourselves. Babel rose toward the heavens, but its true danger lay in our prideful hearts. Our arrogant unity was shattered, languages fractured, confusion spread, and we were scattered into yet another painful exile. Our cycle continued: intimacy, rebellion, and distance. Yet each exile opened a door, proving that our home in Eden was never fully forgotten. This isn't just an ancient tale of failure. It is the story of us and our desperate hunger for knowledge and meaning. We chase control, calling independence freedom. But each grab only pushes us further away as we hide, cover our shame, and blame others. Yet the voice still echoes, "Where are you?" Across every age, it confronts our conscience, our identity, and our search for connection. The divine remains with us, walking through our exiles and speaking to us in our wanderings. The story of Eden is truly our own story. It is not about ancient trees, but our daily choices. Every rebellion brings exile, yet every exile carries a faint hope of our return. Though a sword bars the way, the tree of life still waits for us. Our home was closed, but the search continues. We started our journey at the edge of the only home we ever knew, cast out into the dust. Behind us, paradise closed like a wound. Ahead lay the long, grinding search for our purpose. We brought children into this harsh world, Cain and Abel. One struggled with the stubborn soil, while the other kept watch over wandering flocks. Looking for validation, we brought our offerings. Abel offered the best of his flock and found the favor we all craved. But Cain's harvest met only silence. No thunder, no grand rejection, just a quiet, empty void that began to fester deep within our soul. Envy burned deep within us. The younger brother was chosen, and the older felt cast aside. In a quiet field beneath the open sky, we spilled our own blood for the very first time. Our first act of violence was not for survival, but for attention. And the Creator came looking for us. "Where is your brother?" We lied, asking if we were meant to guard each other. That unanswered question became the heavy inheritance of our entire journey. We still ask it in our offices and homes. Our first killer was not destroyed, but marked as a warning, sentenced to wander. Exiled but protected from death, we fled east of Eden. Even in our disgrace, we built a city and named it for our future. Our civilization did not rise from innocence, but from guilt. From our broken line came technology, music, and walls. We forged blades and shaped instruments. Our culture did not grow from purity, but from hands stained with blood and genius. As our generations multiplied, our search grew darker. We filled the earth, and strange, ancient boundaries began to blur as we looked for power. We bred giants and legends of myth, but our inner core was rotting away. Every single thought in our hearts had turned entirely toward darkness, a devastating verdict on our existence. It made our Creator grieve, not with thunder or rage, but with profound sorrow. That grief brought a final decision to undo our world. Yet one of us stood apart. Noah, not perfect, but carrying a rare spark of integrity. We were told to build a massive wooden box, a floating tomb for our failing past, and a fragile cradle for our future. We gathered the animals in pairs. The goal was survival through a great reckoning. Then the rains fell for 40 days and 40 nights, systematically undoing our creation. The deep oceans erupted and the heavens broke. Absolute chaos returned, and we floated over a completely drowned world. An endless silence swallowed our mountains and wiped away our cities. Then finally the deluge ended and the waters began to drop. We drifted to rest on the peaks of Ararat. We sent out a raven, then a dove, which returned holding a fresh olive leaf, a sign of a fresh start. We stepped onto dry land, offering up a sacrifice of deep gratitude. Hearing us, the Creator promised never to destroy us again. Not because our nature had changed, but because it had not. We were still flawed from youth, yet we were granted grace. A rainbow stretched above us, a weapon laid down in restraint. A new promise bound us to all living things, but our peace never lasted long. We planted vineyards, drank too much, and exposed our own weakness. Once again, our old cycle of shame and judgment resumed. We split into 70 nations: Canaanites, Hittites, Elamites, Philistines, names that would soon echo across our violent history. Our family tree became a map of future battlegrounds. Then came Babel, a city fueled by our collective ambition. Speaking with a single voice, we built a tower toward the heavens, seeking our own glory rather than God's. United in defiance, we were scattered across the earth, our language fractured and our nations divided. From the ruins of that unfinished monument, we spread outward, unable to understand each other. Our paths branched in deep irony. We had tried to reach the heavens, but were cast down, repeating the same old cycle of pride. Violence, pride, and empire became the building blocks of our story, yet a fragile thread of hope remained through a single preserved family. We were given a patient, quiet mercy, allowed to make our own choices and fail repeatedly. But a major shift was coming. The grand cosmic floods gave way to a much closer focus. Our collective search would now rest on one ordinary family. Not because we deserved it, but because our search needed a new path. Our long fall was ending, and the ascent was starting. Hot winds blew across the plains of Shinar, where we built massive stone cities like Uruk and Eridu, centers of our early belief. The man who would guide our next chapter was born in a bustling empire, not a quiet tent. He was called Abram, not yet a patriarch. He was simply a citizen of Ur, a great Sumerian city near the Euphrates, where towers rose like stairways to the heavens. While our priests read the stars, this ordinary man lived with his father, Terah, surrounded by the busy markets and many gods of our ancient world. Nothing set him apart. He was married to Sarai, but they had no children. In our world where legacy was everything, he had none. He had a family line with no future. Yet from that quiet void, a sudden cosmic voice broke through with an urgent call that we could not ignore. Go, now, leave your homeland, your people, and your father's house. Walk away from everything familiar toward an unseen land. This was no myth of dragons or magic weapons, but the start of our real search. Just an ordinary aging man asked to risk everything for an unwritten future. That is what made our new journey so revolutionary. Our ancient religions never encouraged such wandering. Our gods were always bound to specific temples and rivers. We worshipped the local gods of our cities, fearing that leaving meant leaving them behind. But this voice did not belong to a stone idol. This God followed us, calling us forward. So at 75 years old, Abram began our journey, taking Sarai and Lot with him. Our ancestors packed up everything they owned, beginning a collective search for purpose. They traveled north along the fertile trade routes, stopping first in Haran, then pushed deeper into the unknown. This is where our human quest for meaning truly begins. We see a man suspended between a divine promise and harsh reality. A divine voice offers us a reason for being, promising to make him a great nation, offering a blessing meant to reach every family on earth. Yet our search for purpose hits a wall. The years slip by, the promise remains unfulfilled, and the promised land is already crowded with hostile cities and kings. We feel that same painful tension today. The gap between our current reality and our ultimate destiny. Still, he builds altars to mark the way. In his wandering, he models our own search for connection. He marks the land with stone altars, calling out to the Creator. There are no temples, yet no written laws. Only a trust renewed constantly in a God who refuses to be tied down. But the struggle for survival breaks him, just as it often breaks us. Famine forces him into Egypt. Fear takes over, and he lies, claiming his wife is his sister. Pharaoh claims her, triggering plagues that echo our complicated history with Egypt. In the end, our patriarch is scolded, loaded with wealth, and thrown out. This reveals a core truth about our existence. We do not have to be perfect. He doubts, lies, and fails, yet the Creator still calls him to look up. Count the stars if you can. That is your future. In that moment, our humanity finds its anchor. He simply believes, and that faith is counted as true righteousness. This is not about rules or moral perfection. It is a deeper relational trust that redefines what it means to be connected to the divine. We are not meant to be mindless servants. We are designed to be partners in cosmic history. This sacred bond is sealed not by ink but through ancient ritual. Sacrificial animals are divided, clearing a path. He falls into a heavy sleep, and in that dark silence, a smoking firepot and a blazing torch pass through, sealing the promise. Yet our journey is never easy. He is warned that his descendants will be wandering strangers, enslaved and oppressed in a foreign land for 400 years. But our suffering has a purpose. Afterward, they will escape with great wealth and claim their home. We can see our future unfolding through trials, slavery, and deliverance. Yet in the immediate present, the painful silence remains, and his wife has no child. Desperate for answers, she takes control of her destiny. She gives her servant Hagar to her husband, producing a son named Ishmael. But this human solution is not the promised answer we are looking for. It is a deeply human mistake born of impatience. But it is not the end of our search. When he reaches 99, the divine voice speaks again, demanding total devotion. Walk before me and be whole. I am God Almighty. A fresh promise is made, and identities are reshaped. He is renamed Abraham, father of nations, and she becomes Sarah, a princess. Joy will replace their doubt, and their long-awaited son will be named Isaac, meaning laughter. To ground this destiny in physical reality, they are given a physical sign, circumcision. The covenant is written in their very flesh as a permanent reminder. This reshapes how we understand our purpose. It is not about power or conquering others, but responding to a call, trusting blindly, and building hope in strange lands. This single life birthed 3 major global religions, shaping the spiritual search of billions of people. And it all started with one challenging command: leave. Go into the unknown, toward a destination he would never fully see, chasing a promise that felt completely impossible. He walked away from his old life and entered history. He found his purpose not through perfection, but through listening. and by truly listening, he changed the course of human destiny forever. Our collective search moves forward through barren deserts and temporary camps. He travels under a new identity given by the Creator, a name that promises an endless family. Yet the reality of those descendants is still just a vision. He is left staring at the stars and the dust, imagining a future beyond what his eyes can see. Beside him is his wife, renamed Sarah, meaning princess. They both carry the weight of aging with the possibility of having children long since gone. They have spent a lifetime wandering from city to desert, always on the move, trapped in a cycle of constant searching and waiting for a sign. The homeland is promised, yet they are still foreigners. The child is promised, yet she remains barren. Then 3 mysterious travelers arrive at their camp. He rushes to welcome them, offering comfort and shelter. In our shared human history, desert hospitality has always been sacred. He prepares a feast of bread, milk, and meat. As they rest, a startling declaration echoes across the centuries. By this time next year, your wife will bear a son. Listening from the tent, she laughs. She laughs because it seems impossible for her aging body. But the guest challenges her doubt, asking why she laughed and reminding us that nothing is impossible for the Creator. Finally, hope becomes a tangible reality. A son is born named Isaac, bringing laughter. Yet even in our moments of great joy, conflict is never far away. Long before this miracle, our ancestors tried to force their own destiny. Out of despair, she had sent her servant Hagar to bear a child for them. That union produced Ishmael, a name meaning God hears. But when the true child of promise arrives, old family rivalries flare up once more. Fearing for her own son's future, she demands the boy and his mother be banished. Though deeply grieved, he is told that Ishmael's life also has a divine purpose. Cast out, she wanders into the barren wilderness. When their water is completely gone, she leaves her crying boy under a bush, unable to watch him perish. Yet even in the desert, our cry for survival is answered. A voice reassures her, showing her a well of water. The boy lives, and their journey goes on. He is destined to father a wild, free nation in the desert. Meanwhile, back in Canaan, the miracle son Isaac grows up carrying the weight of our future destiny. Then, a terrifying test challenges the very meaning of our existence. He is commanded to take his beloved son, his only hope, to the mountains of Moriah. He is told to surrender his son as a sacrifice. Without a single word of protest, he wakes early, prepares the wood, and sets out. They travel for 3 silent days. When the mountain finally appears, he leaves his servants behind. Together, father and son walk up toward their ultimate fate. The boy carries the wood, while his father holds the fire and the knife. When asked where the offering is, he can only reply that the Creator will provide. He builds the altar, places his bound son upon the wood, and raises the knife in ultimate surrender. Just then, a voice calls out to stop him. The angel of the Lord cries out, "Do not harm the boy." Now your devotion is clear. A ram caught in the brush becomes the sacrifice instead. The place is called Yahweh Yir. The Lord will provide. The crisis ends, but the emotional scars remain. Isaac survives, but the deep, silent trauma between father and son is left unwritten. Our human journey continues through heavy silence. Sarah dies in Hebron. Abraham buys a tomb, our first tiny claim on the promised soil of Canaan. The destiny is promised, but we do not own it yet. Isaac must build a family, so Abraham sends a servant far away to find a bride. A desperate prayer at a well brings Rebekah. She offers water to him and his beasts, a sign of hope. She chooses to follow him, and in an open field she becomes Isaac's comfort and wife. He loves her. She heals his grief. When Abraham dies, he is laid by Sarah, and even exiled Ishmael returns for the burial. Divided by years of pain, the brothers unite at their father's grave. They will part ways again, but this quiet peace binds them as Isaac carries our hopes forward. Yet our existence remains tangled in joy, rejection, and sacrifice. Parents carry our destiny, while outcasts bear the heavy loads. Our purpose remains distant, yet you and I watch the journey press onward. Not easily, and never fast, but deeply, through envy and trust, emptiness and abundance, in strange lands and at quiet altars. This is how we grow, from a single family into a nation, redefined by sacred purpose of ancient promises, binding our descendants of weeping in desert wastelands, and water finding us when we are utterly lost. Now Isaac fathers 2 sons. These boys will fight, lie, and search the heavens. The cycle of danger and destiny repeats, but our bedrock is set. The tent, the altar, the peak. The Creator is not some cold, distant observer. He enters straight into our chaotic lives, our painful delays, and our hardest trials. He walks beside us in our wandering, speaking through fire and quiet, protecting both the chosen and the outcast. We find him when we welcome strangers, and when parched ground cracks open to give us life, in the command that spares a life, and in the space between our joy and our pain. This is no tidy legend. It is raw, restless, and deeply human. It sweeps like desert wind, rises like dust beneath our feet, a whisper we cannot capture. Yet through our struggles, the great design endures, a home, endless generations, and a calling to bless the earth. We must remember the outcast in the wild, the mother who laughed in disbelief, the boy's terrified eyes, and the father's agonizing silence. These details are not mere decorations, they are the scaffolding of our existence. So our journey plunges deeper into conflict, dreaming, and betrayal. Our next chapter starts where we all begin, with 2 rival brothers, Jacob and Esau. A stairway to heaven, wrestling with the divine and finding a new identity. Jacob's search starts in the darkness of the womb, fighting his brother before taking his first breath. Esau is born first, ruddy and wild, a child of the soil, but Jacob follows hard behind, clutching his brother's heel. His name means the grasper, the schemer, and that is precisely who he turns out to be. Their father Isaac is aging and passive, a quiet link between giants. He lives in the silence between Abraham and Jacob. But their mother Rebekah senses Jacob's true destiny. Was it a divine premonition, or just her own plot? Meanwhile, Isaac favors Esau, a rugged hunter of the wild versus a quiet thinker in the tents. It is the classic human clash, raw instinct versus clever intellect. But the stakes are our very destiny. One afternoon, Esau stumbles home starving. Jacob is cooking a red, blood-colored lentil stew. "Give me your birthright," Jacob demands. Desperate, Esau shrugs it off. He is starving today. What value is a future inheritance to a dying man? He consents, and with a simple meal, our sacred lineage shifts. But the schemer wants more. Years later, a blind and dying Isaac prepares to give Esau the ultimate irreversible blessing. Sensing the danger to Jacob's future, Rebekah acts immediately. She covers Jacob in animal skins to mimic his brother's touch, cooking the meal just as Isaac loves it. Trembling Jacob enters. His father doubts, but age and failing senses betray him. The solemn words are spoken: dominion, spiritual authority, and cosmic purpose. When Esau finally returns from the hunt, his future is already gone. His tears are not just for a stolen promise, but for the permanent rift now dividing them. Esau vows that once their father passes, his brother will pay with his life. Terrified, Jacob flees into the barren waste with nothing but a rock for a headrest, pursued by his own guilt. But in that lonely darkness, reality splits wide open. In his sleep, he witnesses a ramp linking Earth to the cosmos, with divine messengers climbing up and down. Above it stands the source of our being, speaking to him. I am beside you and will protect you. The grand purpose of our species flows to the next branch. Jacob gasps awake, naming the ground Bethel, the gate of heaven. No sanctuary, no golden throne, just dirt, where the infinite meets our fragile human reality. It shows that even deceitful runaways can carry our hope and dream. He journeys on. Meeting his uncle Laban is like facing his own reflection, only older and far more cunning. Laban has 2 daughters. Leah is the eldest, and Rachel is stunning. Desperately in love, Jacob labors 7 years for Rachel. But after the dark wedding night, he wakes to find Leah in his tent. Laban merely shrugs, "Complete this wedding week and you can have Rachel too, for another 7 years of labor." Outplayed but determined, Jacob accepts. The con man gets conned. Decades slip by, bringing 12 sons born to 4 different women, Leah, Rachel, and their servants Bilhah and Zilpah. In this chaotic household, our collective future begins to take root. Rivalry flares, but barren Rachel finally gives birth to Joseph, the beloved son of her deep longing. Jacob outsmarts his uncle, growing incredibly wealthy. But as hostility rises, he knows he must face his past and go home. He sends messengers ahead with massive gifts, but the reply terrifies him. Esau is marching toward him with 400 soldiers. Panicked Jacob splits his family to survive. On the night before they meet, he isolates himself once more, but in the pitch black a mysterious figure attacks him. A desperate struggle begins. No dialogue, no names, only straining muscle dust and heavy breathing. Through the dark hours, Jacob holds on. At daybreak, his hip is struck and dislocated. Yet he clings. "Bless me," he demands. The stranger complies. "You are no longer Jacob, but Israel, for you have wrestled with God and humanity and survived." To be human is to wrestle with God, not to blindly obey, but to struggle. Our purpose leaves us scarred and limping. And there Esau approaches. Jacob bows 7 times, but Esau runs to embrace him, weeping. Decades of bitter hatred melt away in an instant. A silent, complete forgiveness. 2 brothers are finally at peace, or at least as close as we get in this life. Jacob moves on, building altars and burying idols, but sorrow is never far. His daughter Dinah is violated in Shechem. In a blind fury, her brothers Simeon and Levi avenge her by slaughtering the entire city. Jacob is horrified not just by their vengeance, but by the danger it invites. Their fragile peace is shattered, proving that violence only breeds more violence. Then Rachel dies while giving birth to Benjamin. Her grave stands as a monument to grief. Isaac passes away and Jacob returns to Hebron. The family circle closes, but the narrative is about to shift. The focus now shifts to Joseph, the dreamer and favored son of Rachel. Yet Jacob, now named Israel, has already lived 1,000 different lives. He has played the liar and the victim, the runaway and the patriarch. He saw heavenly ladders in dreams, battled angels in the dark, and walked away limping into the dawn. You and I can see his life is about transformation, not perfection. Our search for meaning is never a straight line, and sometimes our greatest growth leaves bruises. Joseph was 17 when the family fracture finally broke open. He was the golden child, born in Jacob's old age, the precious firstborn of his beloved Rachel. His brothers saw it clearly. They noticed it in the way their father watched him, felt it in how he spoke of him, and could never ignore the ultimate gift. A long-sleeved robe of many colors, signaling special status rather than just love. He was a marked man. Then Joseph had a dream, and he spoke up. He described sheaves of grain bowing to his, and spoke of the sun, moon, and stars bending down before him. His visions may have been innocent, but they stung. They cut like knives. Even Jacob scolded his favorite son, though he quieted his mind and remembered. Later, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers in the pastures. Spotting him from far away, his vibrant coat shimmering in the daylight, they began to plot. "Here comes the great dreamer," they muttered. "Let us kill him. We will see what becomes of his visions then." Reuben stepped in, urging them to throw him into a dry pit rather than spill blood, intending to save him later. Once they stripped Joseph of his coat and dropped him into the dry cistern, Reuben wandered off. As the others sat down to eat, an Ishmaelite caravan appeared, heading for Egypt. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh. Judah saw an opportunity. "What do we gain by killing our brother? Let us sell him instead." They pulled Joseph from the dark pit and sold him for 20 silver shekels, trading a life for coins. They smeared his coat in goat's blood and took it to Jacob, who wept at the stained fabric. "A wild beast has devoured my boy," he cried. Ripping his clothes in deep grief, he refused to be comforted by anyone. Meanwhile, Joseph was brought to Egypt and sold to Potiphar, Pharaoh's captain of the guard. Joseph served faithfully, prospering in everything he did, until Potiphar put him in charge of his entire household. But Potiphar's wife noticed the young man and desired him. Joseph flatly refused, but she kept pressing him daily until she finally grabbed him by his cloak. He broke free and ran, leaving his cloak in her hand. She used the garment to frame him, and Potiphar believed her, throwing Joseph into prison. Yet the pattern repeated. Joseph found favor even there. The jailer put him in charge of everything, and once again, prophetic dreams returned. 2 officials of Pharaoh had dreams they could not explain. As you and I seek answers, Joseph asked them, "Do not interpretations belong to God?" He then foretold the cupbearer's restoration. He told the baker his dream meant execution. Both predictions came true. Joseph pleaded with the cupbearer to remember him when restored, but the man completely forgot. 2 full years passed. Then Pharaoh had a dream. Standing by the Nile, 7 fat cows emerged, only for 7 sickly thin cows to follow and devour them. He woke, then dreamed again. 7 plump, healthy ears of grain were swallowed by 7 withered ones. None of Egypt's wise men or magicians could explain what it meant. Finally, the cupbearer remembered. Joseph was quickly summoned. He washed, shaved, changed his clothes, and listened as Pharaoh told him the dreams. Joseph answered, "I cannot do this, but God will give Pharaoh peace." The 7 healthy cows and ears mean 7 prosperous years. The lean cows and withered ears mean 7 years of famine. God has revealed what he is about to do. Joseph then advised appointing a wise leader to store food during the years of great abundance. Pharaoh recognized God's wisdom in him, elevating him from a prison pit to second in command of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old. He traveled Egypt gathering grain during the bumper years and piling it in massive silos. Then the famine arrived, devastating not just Egypt, but the land of Canaan too. Hearing of grain in Egypt, Jacob sent 10 sons to buy food, keeping Benjamin, Rachel's last son, home. When they arrived, they bowed to Joseph, completely unaware of who he was. Speaking through an interpreter, Joseph accused them of spying. They protested, saying they were 12 honest brothers, one now lost, and the youngest still at home. Joseph kept Simeon hostage, sending the others back with orders to return only with Benjamin. Secretly, he had his servants slip their silver back into their grain sacks. Jacob refused to let Benjamin go, but starvation forced his hand. Judah stepped forward, promising to carry the blame forever if he failed to bring the boy back safely. They returned to Egypt. This massive welcomed them with a maxli in order of their birth. Benjamin was served 5 times more than the others. Though baffled, they kept eating, completely unaware that Joseph was setting up one final ultimate test. He hid his personal silver cup inside Benjamin's grain sack. Shortly after they left, he sent his guards to overtake them, and the stolen cup was found. In absolute despair, the brothers tore their clothes and dragged themselves back to the palace. There, Judah stood before Joseph, recounting their family's tragic history once more. He described Jacob's crushing grief and the vow he had personally sworn, begging to remain as a slave in Benjamin's place. How could he face his father without the boy? Unable to contain his emotion any longer, Joseph sent his guards away and burst into loud weeping. "I am Joseph," he cried. "Is my father still alive?" His brothers were speechless and terrified. He drew them close, saying, "Do not be angry with yourselves. God sent me ahead of you to preserve human life. You and I see that what was meant for evil, God turned to good." Hearing of the reunion, Pharaoh warmly sent wagons to bring the entire family to Egypt. Trembling with hope, old Jacob traveled to Egypt and collapsed into his son's arms. "I can die in peace now," he wept, "having seen your face alive." 17 years passed. Facing his final days, Jacob blessed his sons, leaving them with destiny-filled words that pointed toward our ultimate purpose. He adopted and blessed Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Though he died in Egypt, he was buried back in Canaan's cave of Machpelah, resting near Abraham and Isaac. With Jacob gone, the brothers feared revenge. They sent Joseph a message claiming their father had commanded him to show mercy before he passed. They begged for forgiveness, and Joseph wept, reassuring them that even though their human plans were meant for evil, a higher plan was at work. God turned their bad intentions into a way to save lives. Joseph saw 3 generations of descendants before delivering his final parting words. He promised his family, "God will surely rescue you and bring you to the promised land." Then he made them swear to carry his bones out of Egypt. Then Joseph died. They prepared his body, and he was laid to rest in an Egyptian coffin waiting. As we search for our ultimate purpose, we see this story end in exile. A promise buried in Egypt, yet the hope of our true home remains alive. His bones waited, but the human journey pressed forward. Generations passed, and the world changed since Joseph wept over his brothers in that grand palace. Long after the famine drove them to Egypt, and after those golden years of safety when they flourished as guests in the territory of God. But time erases memory, and old alliances crumble in the halls of power. These travelers had originally arrived just looking to survive. Now they were mere builders of another man's empire. A new king rose to power, one who cared nothing for Joseph's legacy. It mattered little whether he forgot or chose to ignore the past. He saw these foreigners not as heroes, but as a growing threat. They were too numerous, too foreign, and too strong. The Nile Delta was bursting with their presence. As fear clouded his judgment, Pharaoh did what insecure rulers always do to control humanity. He forced them into chains. Forced to build storage cities like Pithom and Ramses, they labored in the dirt, their lives crushed beneath an endless burden. Under a brutal sun, their bodies were crushed. You and I might wonder, why exist if only to suffer? This was pure survival. It was brutal oppression, disguised as duty. But here is the mystery of human resilience. The more they were crushed, the more they multiplied. As they continued to multiply, a desperate Pharaoh turned to a far darker plan. He summoned the Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, ordering them to kill every newborn boy while letting the girls live. It was a silent plan for slow extermination. But these women answered to a higher power than any earthly king. They let the boys live. When confronted, they offered a clever excuse. The Hebrew women are too strong. They give birth before we even get there. Surprisingly, the ruler believed them, but the cruelty only escalated. a new decree went out: throw every newborn Hebrew boy into the Nile. Into this world of terror, a special child was born. His mother hid him for 3 months, and when she couldn't anymore, she built a tiny papyrus basket. She coated it with tar and set her baby afloat in the very waters meant to kill him, drifting between life and death. His sister Miriam watched from the reeds. Suddenly, Pharaoh's own daughter came down to the water to bathe. Spotting the basket, she opened it and heard the baby cry. She knew he was a Hebrew child, yet her heart softened with compassion. Maybe it was the baby's tears, or a quiet rebellion against her father's cruelty. Whatever it was, she chose mercy. She claimed him. Miriam stepped forward, bravely offering to find a nurse, and the baby was returned to his own mother's arms. He grew up protected by the royal house that wanted him dead. They named him Moses, meaning drawn from the water. He grew up caught between 2 worlds, Hebrew by blood, Egyptian by education. An enslaved child raised as a prince, learning their language and ways. He learned court protocols and the deep wisdom of Egypt, yet deep down his true identity was never fully erased. As an adult, he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. A sudden wave of anger and injustice exploded within him. He struck the guard, killing him. Moses hid the body in the sand, but the secret quickly got out. Pharaoh found out, and royalty couldn't save him now. Moses fled east, escaping deep into the harsh, untamed wilderness. Crossing into Midian, he traded royal robes for simple clothes and gold for a shepherd's staff. There he married Zipporah and settled down. He lived quietly among the tents and sheep. Years drifted by until a strange fire changed everything. Tending sheep near Mount Horeb, he saw a bush burning with fire, yet it was not consumed. Intrigued, he walked closer. Out of the flames, a voice called, "Moses, Moses!" He answered, "Here I am." The voice replied, "Take off your sandals, for the ground where you stand is holy." This was no silent idol of wood or stone, but a living voice declaring, "I am the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Terrified, Moses hid his face. "I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries, I feel their pain, and I have come down to rescue them." But then came the shock. "I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people out." Terrified, Moses shrank back, asking, "Who am I to do this?" The voice replied, "I will be with you." It was a promise of presence, not performance. Yet Moses still hesitated. What is my purpose? Who sent me? The ultimate answer to our existence is found in his name. I am who I am. Tell them I am has sent you. Here was a name beyond names, a presence unfettered by form, the very essence of existence itself. Yet in our endless search for meaning, like Moses, we still resist. What if they reject me? What if my voice fails? We constantly fear our own insignificance. But the voice answered with signs. Turning a simple wooden staff into a serpent, a hand became diseased, then instantly healed. Water turned to blood. Still we plead for someone else to carry the burden of purpose. But the voice offered a compromise. Aaron would speak, but the journey belonged to Moses. So the shepherd returned to his roots, gripping his staff, marching back to face the empire that once defined him. The massive palace gates loomed ahead. Behind them sat a new king, different from the ruler who had tried to end his life as a baby, yet driven by the same hunger for control. To him, Moses delivered the ultimate demand of human dignity, echoed through the ages. Let my people go. Our collective march toward freedom had begun, but it would not be easy. The tyrant's heart remained cold, and the empire refused to surrender its grip. What followed was a battle of cosmic forces, not armies. Terrible wonders fell upon Egypt, completely shattering their illusion of ultimate human control. Yet before this clash of powers amidst the mud bricks and broken bodies, a spark of hope stirred. Moses had escaped. He was once a prince raised on power and privilege, but after killing a taskmaster to protect a slave, he fled his comfortable life, running deep into the barren wilderness. He traded the grand halls of power for the silent sands of Midian, living as a simple keeper of sheep. He tended another man's flocks, married a stranger's daughter, and watched over animals under the silent sky, searching for a meaning he could not yet name. For 40 years, a quiet emptiness defined his existence. Then, in an instant, everything shifted. He found himself standing at the foot of the mountain of God. As the sheep drifted, a strange sight stopped him cold. A desert bush, ablaze, yet completely unconsumed by the fire. The branches danced with heat but never turned to ash. It was fire without ash, heat without destruction, a scene defying all natural law. Stepping closer, a voice echoed from the flames, calling his name. "Moses, Moses." He answered, "Here I am." The voice warned, "Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for this ground is holy." This was no trick of the mind, nor was it some desperate hallucination born of his lonely wanderings. This was pure presence. The voice did not beg. It commanded from a place of absolute truth, and truth needs no permission. "I am the God of your father." It was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses hid his face in terror. There is no way to prepare for a direct encounter with our ultimate source. It was a weight heavier than fear, the entire purpose of human history settling onto one man. Then came a revelation not of raw power, but of deep compassion. "I have seen the misery of my people, I have heard their cries, I know their suffering, and I have come down to rescue them." We are never truly abandoned. In the long decades of silence and the suffering that seems to vanish into nothingness, our source is always watching. He was not a distant observer, but a creator preparing to act. "Now, I am sending you to Pharaoh to lead my people out." Moses froze. He had no army, no influence, and no voice. Facing the ultimate question of his own existence, he asked, "Who am I to do this? Who am I to confront the empire?" But the answer was not about his abilities. The voice simply promised, "I will be with you." Purpose lies in presence, not pride. You and I must realize we are just vessels, not the flame itself. Yet Moses, drowning in doubt, asked, "What if I go and say their ancestral God sent me, and they ask, 'What is his name? What do I tell them?'" This was not a simple question. It was humanity's desperate search for ultimate identity. Other gods had neat limited names bound to specific roles, but this voice rose from absolute mystery. How could any human word possibly contain the source of everything? God replied, "I am who I am. Tell them I am has sent me." It was not a title, but a declaration of pure, uncaused existence. This is existence itself, eternal, limitless, transcending time. He commanded, "Tell them the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has sent me to you. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob has sent me. This is my name forever, the name by which every generation will know me." This was the first revelation of the sacred name Yahweh. It was too holy to speak aloud, too infinite for human minds to ever fully grasp. This name spoke of absolute presence and being the ultimate foundation of all human existence. Then came the mandate. "Go gather the elders of Israel and speak. Tell them what you saw. Tell them liberation is coming. Then confront Pharaoh, demanding he let the people journey 3 days into the desert to offer worship." But the empire will resist, God warned. Only a mighty hand will break their grip. This quest for meaning and freedom was bound to be a fierce confrontation. The tyrant's heart would harden, but the source of life would not back down. I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with wonders they cannot ignore. Only then will he let you go. This was more than a physical rescue. It was a clash between two fundamentally opposed powers. Pharaoh, the self-proclaimed god of men, versus the great I Am. The fragile deities of nature against the eternal source of all existence. The tyranny of man against the promise of heaven. Still Moses doubted, asking, "What if they reject me?" So God provided signs, turning his staff into a serpent, a hand diseased, then completely restored, and water turned to blood. These wonders were not cheap magic tricks, but proof of divine presence moving through the ordinary. Yet Moses stumbled again, protesting that he was slow of speech. But the Creator asked, "Who made the human mouth? Who gives us our voice? Who makes us deaf or mute, seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord?" Then came the ultimate command. "Now go, I will help you speak and teach you what to say." Yet Moses pleaded, "Please send anyone else." So God appointed Aaron to speak for him. Together they walked into the heart of empire to speak for eternity. This is where our collective search for purpose always leads us.
Moses said goodbye to his past, gathered his family, and took up the staff, the very tool that would soon split seas and shatter the illusion of human power. Our search for meaning took a turn. In the desert wind, a simple shepherd became the keeper of a sacred name, showing us we were made for something eternal. He was not just walking to Egypt, but stepping into our collective history. In the quiet night, we realized the divine had descended to meet us. Not to explain our suffering, but to end it. The Nile ran red, frogs swarmed, and gnats rose like smoke. Egypt, our grand empire of stone and order, began to fall. It fractured not from war, but from a strange divine power. We watched a cosmic drama unfold, showing us who truly holds our destiny. It was a battle fought not for politics, but for our ultimate freedom. And at the center stood Moses, an old man with a burning fire in his chest, confronting the empire. His demand was simple: "Let my people go." It was a command, not a negotiation, for our freedom, a decree from the Creator who revealed himself. As I am speaking from a burning bush, this was the source of our existence, calling us back. The divine, remembering ancient promises, was ready to show us our purpose. But Pharaoh resisted, his heart completely hardened against this higher calling. Frozen by centuries of human pride and false godhood, Pharaoh believed he ruled creation. Letting his slaves go for an invisible lord was not just bad politics, it threatened his entire reality. It was absolute sacrilege, shattering his identity. So our search for truth faced the plagues. First, the waters turned to blood, a literal disaster. Fish died and decay filled the air. Egypt's magicians tried to copy it, but only made our suffering worse. Pharaoh watched unbothered. Next, frogs swarmed our lives, invading our beds, ovens, and homes. They got into our food and mouths. Sorcerers could summon frogs too, but could not banish them. Pharaoh begged for mercy, and Moses prayed. The frogs died, but Pharaoh turned away. Then the very dust turned into swarms of gnats. Even the magicians surrendered, whispering that this was divine power. Yet pride won again. Next came flies, blotting out the sun as disease swept through our precious livestock. Boils tormented our bodies. Hail ruined our crops, and locusts ate the rest. The false gods we made of the sun, the Nile, and healing all fell silent. These plagues were not random. They targeted the false beliefs that blinded our souls. Then came 3 days of heavy darkness. It was a terrifying loss of direction, where we could not even see the person standing next to us. Time itself broke. For a humanity relying on the sun and the seasons, this sensory deprivation wounded our very souls, forcing us to look inward. Yet Pharaoh refused to yield.
driving us toward the final, most devastating tragedy, the loss of every firstborn child. A quiet, solemn warning was given. At midnight, a heavy silence would grip every home, from the grand palace to the cold prison, touching every family. No swarms or storms this time, only a quiet absence as life slipped away, never to return. Yet a path to salvation emerged. One night, a sacred meal and a ritual for all generations, a spotless lamb offered at twilight.
Searing blood marked our doorways. We ate roasted meat with bitter herbs and flatbread, ready to move at a moment's notice. Staffs in hand, shoes tied, we stood ready. The shadow of death passed over blood-marked homes, sparing them. Then midnight struck, and a great cry rose from the empire. No home was spared. Pharaoh's own heir lay lifeless, while their silent stone gods did nothing to save them. Broken, the king summoned Moses. "Go," he demanded. "Take everyone, our children, our families, and our livestock." A captive nation marched out into the night, carrying silver and gold given by their terrified neighbors. Generations of slavery ended in a matter of hours. This was the Exodus, our legendary way out, but it also marked a brand new beginning for humanity. For the first time, a free people would write their own destiny. But the old world refused to let go. Pharaoh's grief quickly hardened into pure rage. He sent 600 elite war chariots in pursuit. Trapped by the vast sea, we stood terrified and utterly disorganized. In our panic, we cried out, asking why we were brought here to die. Then Moses raised his staff, and the deep sea divided. As water rose like walls, we walked through on dry land. Every step declared our refusal to live and die as slaves. The empire's chariots rushed into our path, but the sea does not answer to earthly kings or bow to military might. The waters crashed down, silencing our captors. This was more than escape. It transformed us. We were no longer defined by chains, but by divine wonder. We would never forget this moment. Every year we would share the meal, recount the story, and pass down this legacy. Why is this night different from all others? Because tonight we discovered our true worth as the divine stood with the oppressed. We found a creator who hears us active not just in myths, but in our real history, using flawed humans, stubborn rulers, bread and fire. But our journey of existence was just starting. The wilderness called to us, and the sea stood as a barrier separating us from our painful past. We slipped away into the night, guided by Moses, a complicated man torn between two worlds, a Hebrew prince turned exile. Carrying our ancestral bones and our children, we fled with terror close behind us. In the distance, the rising dust signaled the empire's final furious pursuit. Earth's mightiest army was hunting down a defenseless crowd. It was advanced weaponry against our bare hands, war horses against our simple sandals. Trapped by the sea with no way forward, we panicked and cried out to Moses, asking if we were brought here to die. "Did you lead us out just to perish in this desert?" But Moses didn't fight back with anger. He simply raised his hands and lifted his staff. The wind screamed as the sea was torn wide open, waters piled high like walls, trembling before the unseen power that guides our existence. The dry earth became a path carved by divine design, not tides. And so our ancestors walked through the sea, clutching their children, seeking a purpose beyond survival. Priests, elders, young and old, all stepped into the unknown to discover why we exist. Behind them, Pharaoh pursued, blind to the truth that this sacred path was not his to claim. As the final Israelites reached safety, the walls of water crashed back down, sealing our destiny away from our past. Chariots and horses vanished, claimed by a higher order. This was not a mere escape, but our birth. In Egypt, we were slaves, but here our true purpose began. Through the waters, we became something more,
a community defined not by borders but by a shared covenant. We were reborn to find our ultimate meaning in the wild. Our joy erupted into sacred song. Miriam led the women in dance, tambourines echoing across the sands as we celebrated our newfound existence.
Sing of the triumph of forces overcome. This anthem was not about vengeance, but survival. It was our realization that we exist to dwell in the divine presence. We were free, but we quickly learned that freedom without direction is a vast emptiness. The endless desert stretched before us. With no cities or crops, we looked to the skies. A pillar of cloud by day and fire by night guided our search for meaning. We soon discovered that bondage leaves deep scars. Slavery had shaped our very rhythms, making us crave predictable chains over the terrifying quest for real purpose. We missed the bread and the dark comfort of structure, even with the lash. We were no longer captives, but we had not learned how to truly live. 3 days in parching thirst struck. The water we found was bitter, prompting dark doubts, but a cry of faith transformed it, sustaining our fragile hope. As hunger pursued us, bread fell from the sky. Each morning, a mysterious dust covered the desert floor. This manna was sweet, like honey, gathered daily in perfect measure. It melted away under the sun, leaving us to wonder, what is it? We did not understand, yet we were fed. Meat came in the twilight water, poured from dry rocks, bringing life out of the silent void. The void was empty, but filled with the divine. Yet we met each miracle with bitter doubt, struggling to carry the heavy gift of freedom in our minds. Still chasing shadows of past captivity, we quarreled. Our leader bore the exhausting weight of a restless species, trying to find its place in the cosmos. He pressed on, leading by obedience rather than might. At the base of Mount Sinai, a deep thunder shook the earth, calling us to our true destiny. Lightning shattered the sky as smoke wrapped the mountain. In that sudden shift, we realized we were no longer mere wanderers. We were a people called by name. But that ultimate revelation was still ahead, for now we stood beyond the sea, having crossed the deep waters and escaped our ancient captors. Our journey had begun. With no map but presence and no roof but the stars, we walked. Guided only by a voice in fire, we marched not as a crowd, but as a family. It begins with smoke. Mount Sinai rises like a dark spine in the wilderness, wrapped in heavy thunderclouds and a silence that feels too dense for human lungs. Newly freed from slavery, we stood blinking in the harsh light, trying to comprehend our ultimate destiny. Camping at the mountain's foot, we did not know this ground would become sacred. Here we would encounter a mystery older than language itself, the source of our existence. An entity speaking not in human words, but in roaring fire. Our journey thus far had defied all nature, from parted seas to water from dry stones. Yet those wonders were nothing compared to this. We were not merely escaping death. We were discovering why we exist, transforming from a tribe into a unified people. We needed laws to order and a sacred covenant to define our purpose. But first we had to meet our Creator. We were given 3 days to prepare ourselves, 3 days to wash our clothes and purify our souls. A deep, quiet reverence settled over the camp, and even the children played in hushed whispers. Looking up, we dared not touch the mountain. A strict boundary stood between us and the infinite, where crossing meant death. Then the fateful morning dawned. Lightning ripped through the sky, and thunder cracked as if tearing the earth apart. A piercing trumpet blast echoed from the heavens, shaking our very souls. This was a sound far beyond human breath. As smoke enveloped Mount Sinai, the massive mountain itself began to shake under the weight of cosmic order. The mountain quaked like a living being, straining under the descent of the infinite. Into this thick smoke, our representative climbed to seek the answers. This was not mere meditation, but absolute revelation.
The ancient word for glory means weight, a crushing reality that defines why we are here. At Sinai, the ultimate reality was heavy and terrifying, yet it did not consume us. It called, Moses answered, and he returned to us with 10 words. Carved in stone, these were not suggestions, but absolute commandments. They gave us a concrete blueprint for survival, teaching humanity how to exist in harmony. Here was the foundation of covenantal living, a society built on mutual relationship, not brutal power. The first words demand absolute loyalty. I am your God who freed you from bondage. Not a distant force, but an active presence who knows us. The fundamental demand is simple. Serve no other gods, make no idols, and do not reduce the infinite into mere stone. Never misuse the sacred name, too dense with mystery to define. Then come the laws of humanity. Keep the Sabbath not merely to rest, but to resist the cycle of endless toil and reclaim our dignity. Honor your parents to preserve your roots and continue the human story. Then come the prohibitions guarding against murder, betrayal, theft, and lies. These acts are forbidden because they tear us apart, making peaceful existence impossible. But this revelation of our purpose was not gentle. Standing far off and trembling, we begged Moses to speak to us instead. The raw voice of our Creator was simply too overwhelming to bear. It was not comforting or beautiful, but terrifying. Having watched an empire fall and walked through seas, we were now completely frozen in primal fear. Moses offered a strange truth, telling us not to fear, because this raw encounter was meant to align our hearts and keep us from wandering. A healthy fear leads to reverence, anchoring the morality that ultimately sustains our freedom. This is how we discover our true purpose. What followed was not just law, it was architecture, blueprints for our purpose, instructions for an ark to hold the sacred word. A sacred tent where the infinite could dwell with us. Gold acacia wood, fine linen, exact details, the blueprints for our connection to the divine. This was our ultimate quest, making the abstract real. Our divine purpose needed a physical home. But while Moses was on the mountain, our resolve crumbled below. We grew impatient. We demanded a God we could see, touch, and control. Aaron, the priest in waiting, gave in to our fear. We melted golden earrings into a calf, chasing old familiar symbols of power. Old habits die hard. Even in freedom, our mental chains lingered. When Moses returned, carrying our new destiny, the sight of our betrayal shattered him. He smashed the stone tablets, breaking our promise before it even started. A reckoning followed, but our story did not end. Moses pleaded for us, not just for mercy, but for connection. He knew we needed more than just forgiveness. He demanded assurance. If your presence does not go with us, do not lead us on. For humanity's survival is empty without a divine companion. So a second set of tablets was carved, and in this moment our search went deeper. Moses asked to see God's glory, seeking ultimate truth. Hidden in a cleft of rock, we found our answer. Not in fire or earthquake, but in words. The Lord is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. This is the ultimate truth of existence, character over raw power. When Moses returned, his face radiated a light we could barely look upon. He had touched the light of creation. The promise was restored, and our sacred home was built. The ark rested in the deepest sanctuary. Above it, a divine presence settled, cloud by day, fire by night. The answer to our cosmic loneliness was finally near. Sinai was more than a mountain. It was the point where we met our Creator, a cosmic marriage of heaven and earth. This guiding law was not given to angels, but to us, a tribe of wanderers in the dust. A covenant forged in thunder, meant to echo through our prophets and our entire history. It would echo in our songs, our grief and our joy. Sinai became the compass for our search. the mountain where our freedom found its purpose, and we learned that love is defined by fidelity. It was not the end of our journey, but it gave our search its ultimate meaning. As Moses stood alone at the mountaintop, consumed by the divine presence, he reached the absolute peak of our search. In the heavy silence, the voice of the Almighty spoke. He received the laws etched in stone, a cosmic guide to show us how to live. Yet far below, the rest of us waited in the dark. Time stretched on, the harsh, empty desert pressed against us, and impatience began gnawing at our hearts. Moses had been gone too long. We turned our desperate eyes to Aaron, demanding a God we could actually see. We wanted something tangible to give us purpose. In our panic, we forgot the miracles, the parting sea, the bread from heaven, the guiding fire. We forgot the ancient promises of who we were meant to be. Aaron yielded to our frantic demands. We stripped off our golden earrings and necklaces to make our own destiny. We melted them down into a golden calf, a familiar Egyptian god. As it took shape, we cried out, saying, "This was the God who saved us." The camp filled with loud music and wild, forgetful dancing. We offered sacrifices to this creation of our own hands, desperately trying to force meaning into gold. Our hearts, once filled with awe for the Creator who freed us, were now captivated by a God we had made ourselves. We ran back to the familiar shadows of Egypt. From the high peak, Moses looked down and saw our chaos through the smoke. He heard the noise of our failure rising up the mountain, the voices of those he had fought to free. A deep anger burned inside him. The stone tablets of our new destiny felt like burning fire in his hands. The Creator spoke with deep sorrow, telling him to go down because the people he rescued had already corrupted themselves. We had abandoned our path so quickly. We had built a golden calf, worshiping it as if it were the answer to our existence. We were told this was the God that saved us. Those words pierced Moses like a sword, realizing we had traded the infinite for a block of metal. We had rejected our higher calling. Our rebellion was total, and divine justice demanded a response. The Creator saw how stubborn we were, refusing to look up. The divine anger threatened to wipe us out completely and start over with Moses. Yet standing between our failure and ultimate judgment, Moses chose to plead for our fragile existence. He begged for mercy. Why destroy the very people you rescued with such power? What was the purpose of our freedom if it ended here? Why let the world say that our Creator only led us out to destroy us in the mountains, to wipe us completely off the face of the earth? Moses appealed to the foundational promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, reminding the divine of our eternal purpose. He argued that through us, all humanity was meant to find its blessing. He spoke not as a mere servant, but as a true partner, as one who understood the divine heart balancing justice and mercy. And in our darkest hour, the Creator listened. "I have forgiven them," came the response. Yet our rebellion still carried a heavy cost. Moses turned and walked back down to us. He carried the 2 stone tablets, our cosmic blueprints, in his hands. But as he drew near, the chaotic noise of our ignorance grew louder. Seeing us dancing and bowing to a metal beast, Moses was filled with grief and rage. With a cry of anguish, he smashed the tablets to the ground. Our potential for greatness lay shattered in the dust. With a burning heart, Moses seized our golden idol, threw it into the fire, and ground it to powder. He threw the dust into the water and made us drink it. We literally swallowed our own illusion, digesting the bitter truth of our failure. He stood before our trembling crowd, his voice shaking with fury and grief as he cried out, asking who stood with the Creator. Only his own tribe responded. They drew their swords to purge the camp of those who betrayed our purpose. About 3,000 of us fell that day, a tragic price for our rebellion. We felt the crushing weight of our failures. Did we destroy our own purpose? Moses went back up the mountain carrying our shattered hopes, begging to restore our connection to our Creator. We have failed so deeply, making gods of gold to fill our emptiness. But if you can forgive our betrayal, maybe our search for meaning can still continue. If not, blot me from your book, Moses begged. But God answered, whoever turns away from their true purpose, I will remove them from my story. We could not escape the consequences of our choices through another man's sacrifice. We had to face our path. Yet we were promised a divine guide to lead us forward.
Though our destination was delayed, we were not left alone in the void. Our Maker spoke again, ordering new stone tablets to rewrite the rules of our existence. The divine presence would return, giving us a second chance. For 40 days and nights, Moses waited, and the Creator passed by, revealing the ultimate name of existence, a God of mercy, patience, and boundless truth. This profound revelation echoed in our collective soul, showing us that our purpose is rooted in divine love. When Moses came back down, his face was glowing with the light of our origin. We stared in awe, barely able to look at the brightness of our true destiny. He veiled his face, but shared the words that gave us direction. Our covenant was restored, and our search for meaning in the wilderness marched on. Despite our failures, we were still called to a higher purpose. The golden calf remained a scar, but it proved we could be restored after falling. Our journey to find ultimate meaning was far from over. Through the harsh wilderness, we had to learn that our Creator is not just a Savior, but our guide, judge, and Redeemer. We were free, but we were not home. Here, you and I watch our journey slow down as we step into the silent desert. The thrilling escape faded into the dry silence of waiting. Newly freed from slavery, we had to ask ourselves, who are we now? We stepped into a brutal wasteland where every single day tested our resolve. We quickly learned that having the freedom to exist is not the same as finding peace. This wasteland was not a prison, but a classroom. Here we were transformed from a wandering tribe into a nation with a destiny. Hunger and silence had to break our old broken habits. Having only known the whip of slavery, we now had to learn how to listen, and we struggled deeply. Our immediate reaction was to complain. Just 3 days into the desert, our water ran dry, and the spring we finally found was too bitter to drink. We turned on our leader in anger, but he cried out to our Maker. When wood sweetened the water we drank, relieved that our journey could continue. The toxic cycle began. Starving, we cried, why did we not just die back in Egypt where we had plenty of bread and sat by pots of meat? The irony was painful. We forgot our heavy chains and only remembered the food, feeling empty in our freedom. Yet God answered us with grace, not anger. That evening, quail arrived to feed everyone. The next morning, the desert floor was covered in a mysterious, frosty flake we had never seen before. We called it manna, meaning what is it? It was sweet, honeyed bread given exactly for our daily survival. If we tried to hoard it, it rotted by sunrise. But on the 6th day, it miraculously lasted longer to protect the holy Sabbath. This was far more than food. It was a lesson in trust. It was an education. We were learning to trust, to obey, and to rest, discovering that rest itself was holy. Resting was our rebellion against our past, where our labor was stolen. By stopping every week, we remembered who we were becoming, far more than mere survivors. We were developing a sacred rhythm and a new purpose. But as we marched on to Rephidim, the water vanished again, and we turned on Moses in panic. "Why did you bring us out to die of thirst with our children?" we demanded. With Moses near breaking, God commanded him to strike a solid rock. He did, and fresh water gushed out. We named that place of testing and quarreling, yet we were never left alone. A divine pillar led us forward.
cloud by day and fire by night, gave us a constant sign of our purpose. When enemies attacked, we fought, knowing we did not stand alone. Moses stood on a hill, raising his hands. Whenever his arms were lifted high, our battle turned in our favor. When his strength failed, others held his arms up. We won, our community deepened, and we learned that survival is a shared human journey. To keep our society from collapsing, we created a system, choosing honest leaders to share the burden of guiding our people. Order was rising from our chaos, giving us structure and stability. Then we finally arrived at the foot of Mount Sinai. We camped under a mountain wrapped in terrifying storms. As the Creator descended in fire, we trembled, and Moses climbed up alone into the mystery. This time, you and I see him receive blueprints for a sacred tent, a portable sanctuary designed to hold the very presence of our Creator. It was built with gold, precious wood, and fine linen, housing a sacred chest of mercy where our earthly existence met the divine. Every piece had meaning. Every detail was exact. This was not just a tent, but a physical map showing us how to connect with our Maker. This sacred sanctuary became the anchor of our lives. When the divine cloud lifted, we marched forward. When it rested, we waited in patience. The divine was now dwelling right in our midst, yet our devotion remained fragile. Even after witnessing Sinai, we continued to falter and lose our way. While Moses spent 40 days on the mountain, we panicked, creating a golden calf to satisfy our fear of the unknown. We traded our divine purpose for a hollow idol. Before the laws were even dry, we broke them. Yet our story did not end in destruction. Our leader begged for our lives and carved new tablets. Our covenant was restored, and we kept walking forward in our search for the promised land. With law came the pursuit of holiness. Our story shifted from dramatic escapes to a structured lifestyle of sacrifices, festivals, and sacred boundaries. These endless rules for food, health, and worship might seem tedious, but at their core, they answered the deepest question of how we are meant to live. We were called to be holy. As you and I reflect on this, holiness was not about being perfect, but finding our true sacred purpose. To find our true purpose, we must live differently in diet, justice, and mercy. The poor are protected, debts erased every 7th year, and land returned during the Jubilee. Foreigners must be treated with absolute fairness. Our shared memory of suffering shapes our laws, making justice sacred. Yet the long road tests more than just our belief. It tests our memory. Whenever hardship strikes, we romanticize our old chains. We forget the heavy bricks and only remember the onions. We cry out for meat, water, and easy comfort. The leader carries our complaints, growing older and heavier with every step. He too will falter before reaching the end. We are being prepared not just to survive, but to inherit our true purpose. A promise awaits, but we cannot claim it while holding on to the habits of slaves. We must become a people of promise, memory, and deep trust. So we wander, and for 40 years an entire generation passes away. The struggle becomes our crucible. With each sunrise, provision appears and rest is kept. We are slowly, steadily shaped into something far greater than just a wandering tribe. We stand at the edge of the river, looking across at the destination promised to our ancestors. The waters before us swell fierce and relentless, yet our future lies on the other side. The mission is clear: to lead the way forward, stepping into the unknown to claim our destiny. And to fulfill the ancient promise of our creation. The journey has been long, marked by trials, but the time has finally come to claim our true inheritance. We spent 40 years wandering the desert. The older generation, those who had only known captivity, had to pass away, leaving their children to step into the promise. Now we must be guided through this final critical threshold. There is no turning back.
As those carrying our sacred covenant approach the river, a quiet command echoes. The waters part before us, just as they did at the beginning of our escape. Leaders stand firm in the deep, holding our sacred trust high while we cross safely to the other side. It was a miracle. Echoing the great wonders of our past, this sight strengthens our faith, proving that the power which delivered us from bondage is still with us, guiding us to our destiny. Once across, we gathered 12 stones from the riverbed, one for each branch of our family, to preserve this moment forever. These stones will serve as a permanent monument, reminding future generations of our great transition and the divine hand that guided our search. We placed the stones at our very first campsite in this new world, pausing to prepare for the great struggles yet to come. Next, we must renew our sacred commitment. A new generation born during our long wanderings has to claim this covenant for themselves. They had not yet undergone the ancient physical sign. This renewal is a symbolic cleansing, reminding you and me that inheriting our purpose requires an inner change. It is the outward symbol of the inner transformation needed to claim our place. Once more, the guiding voice of creation speaks to us, giving us directions for our first great challenge, the walled city of Jericho. This ancient fortress stands directly in our way, testing our resolve in this search for meaning. This is our first real test of faith in this new land. The plan offered to us seems strange, defying all human logic. It is completely unconventional, defying standard military strategy. We are instructed to march around the city for 6 days, with all our fighters keeping absolute silence. Not a single word is spoken. Only trumpets blare with our sacred covenant carried out in front. We obey even when the path to our destiny looks foolish. On the 7th day, we must march around the city 7 times. At the final trumpet blast, these massive walls will collapse before us. For 6 days, we follow these divine instructions without question, walking silently in circles while the enemy watches us from behind their high, secure walls. It feels like a strange ritual, completely devoid of human logic. Yet, we do not waver in our search for truth. We trust the ultimate promise, even when the plan makes no tactical sense. On the 7th day, we march around the city 7 times. When the final trumpet sounds, the massive barriers holding back our future crumble into dust. A tremendous victory is won without us drawing a single sword. This triumph shows us that true victory comes through complete trust in our purpose. Together we surge forward, taking control of our destiny. But we are warned we must completely destroy everything inside this corrupt city, sparing only Rahab, whose faith in our mission saved her entire family. Jericho is left in ruins, showing that the old world must yield to the new, bringing us one step closer to our ultimate home. Yet this victory carries heavy consequences that will soon test our very survival. As in any human triumph, greed threatens to derail our progress. We are warned never to take anything for personal gain, because all ultimate value belongs to the source of life. Despite this, one among us lets greed override our collective purpose. He secretly hides forbidden treasures inside his tent. This single act of selfishness will threaten the survival of our entire journey. Moving toward the small settlement of Ai, we expect an easy victory, forgetting that our strength lies in our shared purpose. Instead, we suffer a shocking defeat, losing 36 lives. In deep despair, our leadership falls to the ground, crying out for answers, asking why our search for destiny has failed. We learn that a secret betrayal has corrupted our collective soul, ruining the purpose of the entire camp. The betrayal is exposed, and the offender is destroyed, serving as a harsh reminder of what is at stake on our journey. Once the corruption is removed, we return to Ai and conquer it. We learn a vital lesson about the purity needed to survive and thrive.
we finally understand that our survival does not come from our own physical power, but from alignment with our ultimate Creator.
We press forward in our search, and gradually the barriers across the land fall before our united resolve. Every victory brings us closer, testing our collective resolve as we search for our true place in existence and our dedication to the divine. We were discovering that our true purpose and place on this earth wouldn't be handed to us. We had to fight for every single inch. Yet we weren't alone in this existential struggle. The same God who parted the Red Sea and stopped the Jordan stood right beside us, guiding our every step, leading us to victory after victory. Still, even with these conquests, we felt a deep underlying tension. Was this really why we existed? The land we fought to claim belonged to others, the Canaanites, and our clashes with them were brutal and bloody. We were told to drive them out to claim our God-given home, but as the war dragged on, the brutal reality of combat forced us to face our own dark nature. Crushing Jericho and Ai was just the beginning of our long journey. Countless battles lay ahead, each testing our resolve. But for a brief moment, we tasted the sweet, rewarding thrill of victory. Jericho's walls lay in ruins, rewarding our faith. The home we longed for was finally within our grasp. Yet looking forward, we knew our search was far from over. More obstacles stood in our path. We would fight more wars and face deep doubt. Yet the memory of Jericho, won through pure faith, kept us going. It was our beacon of hope, guiding us forward. But after Joshua died, we were left without a leader or king, no central voice, no authority. We were just scattered tribes thrown across Canaan like seeds. Every group had its own leaders, its own borders, and its own false gods whispering through our doubts. We had made it to the Promised Land, but it was wild, untamed, and crowded with pagan shrines and hostile neighbors who hated us. Our conquest was incomplete, our purpose unfinished. Without a strong guide, we quickly began to lose our direction. Instead of celebrating, we watched everything we had built slowly fall apart. The unraveling had begun. We failed to clear out the Canaanite strongholds. Shrines remained, intermarriage began, and old idols crawled back into our lives. The line between God's people and the world blurred completely. Our connection to the divine withered away. We forgot our history. Let's look at this endless cycle that began repeating like waves crashing on the shore. We forgot our sacred covenant, turning to false gods. We began worshiping Baal and Asherah in leafy groves and high pagan altars. Gods of rain and soil that we could see, touch, and feed, the invisible creator who demanded our hearts was far too easy to ignore. Then came the inevitable pain. Invaders crushed us. Foreign kings ruled us, and a heavy yoke pressed down on our necks. Only when the agony became unbearable did we cry out, finally remembering our Creator, the true God of Sinai. Out of our desperate cry, a Savior would rise, not a judge in robes, but a warrior, a prophet, a champion for our people, an instrument of divine rescue. We would defeat our enemies, and peace would return, but it never lasted very long. Our Savior would die, and we would forget our purpose again. We fell right back into rebellion, slavery crying out rescue and peace, only to ruin it all again. It was a spinning wheel, crushing our hope of finding true purpose. Othniel was our first savior, a relative of Caleb, that legendary warrior of old. His story is brief. He broke our chains and gave us rest. But the cycle turned again, and Ehud, a left-handed Benjamite warrior, stepped forward. His mission was dangerous. Our oppressor was King Eglon of Moab. Ehud hid a double-edged dagger on his right thigh, bypassing security. He got a private meeting with the king, pretending he had a secret message from God. Then he plunged the blade deep into the obese tyrant's belly. The fat closed over the handle, trapping the weapon inside.
As Eglon died, Ehud escaped, leaving the guards thinking the king was just using the bathroom. We crushed the Moabite army and finally breathed easy. Then came Deborah, a powerful prophetess and our only female judge. She led us from beneath a palm tree, while Barak, our military commander, refused to fight unless she marched with him. Together they faced Sisera and his 900 iron chariots. Against all odds, God gave us the victory. Sisera fled on foot and hid in Jael's tent. She seemed harmless, even offering him a warm drink of milk. Once he slept, she drove a tent peg through his skull. Once more we forgot our purpose, and Gideon rose next. He was a fearful man hiding from our oppressors, yet an angel called him a mighty warrior, which Gideon deeply doubted. We often feel too small to matter, and Gideon did too. Yet he answered the divine call. He tore down his father's pagan altar and gathered a massive army, but God shrunk it, saying, "We had too many men." We had to see that our purpose comes from God, not ourselves. Our army was cut to 300 men with clay jars and horns. We surrounded the enemy camp in the dark, smashed our jars, blew our horns, and let out a massive battle cry. Panic tore through their camp. In the pitch black, the invaders killed each other, and we enjoyed peace once again. So why do we exist? Even Gideon faltered in this search, though he declared God was our only king. Yet we took gold from the spoils, built an idol, and set up a shrine. We flocked there to worship. Another empty answer to our search for meaning. After Gideon died, his son Amalek took the crown by force, butchering his own brothers to rule over us. He became a brutal tyrant. But our search for order under him ended in flames when a woman dropped a stone on his head. The cycle failed us. Violence only bred more violence. Next came Jephthah, an outcast son of a prostitute. Exiled by us, he became a ruthless bandit, leading other broken souls. When enemies threatened our existence, our leaders begged him to return. He agreed, demanding the right to rule us if he won. Desperate for victory, he made a reckless promise to the heavens. He vowed to sacrifice the first thing that greeted him back home. He won the war. But as he arrived, his only child, a daughter, ran out to welcome him with joyful dancing. Our history remembers this with chilling silence. She asked for 2 months to mourn, then she returned, and he fulfilled his terrible promise. Then came Samson. We hoped this miracle child, set apart from birth, would finally show us the way. He could not drink wine, cut his hair, or touch the dead. His raw strength defied nature. In our struggle, he slaughtered armies with a jawbone, ripped city gates from hinges, and burned fields with fire. Yet he was proud, reckless, and easily lured by desire. Like us, his downfall was written from the start. Delilah broke his resolve and cut away his strength. Enemies blinded him, bound him in chains, and mocked our fallen champion. In his final hour, his power returned. He shattered the temple pillars, bringing the whole structure crashing down. He buried himself with his enemies, a tragic hero, ruled by anger, not faith. Our journey was spiraling deeper into darkness. Every savior we found was more flawed than the last. The chaos grew until we had no leaders left at all, only pure horror. A traveler in Gibeah, a brutal assault in the night, a body cut to pieces. We had reached the absolute bottom. We waged a brutal civil war, nearly destroying ourselves entirely. Our struggle was clear. We had no ruler to guide us. We each did whatever felt right in our own eyes. It was a dark end to a desperate age. We held the land, but lost our purpose. We had agreements without a kingdom, belief without memory, and laws without love. Our leaders came and went like crashing waves, each storm more violent than the last. We could not survive this cycle. Something had to give. We cried out for something permanent, not just peace, but a king to anchor our existence. We wanted order, someone to keep us steady when we spun out of control. But that security would cost us dearly. For generations, we lived under the rule of judges, men and women, chosen by the divine to guide our wandering steps. They pulled us through endless loops of failure, pain, and rescue. But soon we began looking at the world around us. We saw powerful kingdoms, royal courts, and mighty armies. We wanted that. We wanted to blend in and be like them.
It was not that our leaders had failed us. We simply craved more stability, more power, and absolute unity. We lost faith in the invisible Creator. In our insecurity, we demanded a king we could actually see, a leader to fight our battles and unite us through peace and war. We just wanted to fit in. This deeply troubled Samuel, our final guide. He had guided us with complete devotion, yet our collective voice was relentless. We did not want a prophet. We demanded a king. We believed a king would make us strong, give our lives meaning, and provide the deep security we craved. But Samuel saw the truth of our illusion. He warned us of the cost, but we refused to listen. A king would tax our wealth, draft our sons into his wars, and force our daughters to serve him. He would take our best land and harvests. We would be ruled by a mere mortal, working ourselves to the bone just to fund his luxury, exactly like the world around us. Human power corrupts. Yet in our desperate search for stability, we refused to back down. We demanded a king with one voice. Deeply grieved, Samuel prayed, and God told him that we had not rejected Samuel himself. Instead, we had rejected our Creator as king. God told him to grant our wish, but to warn us of the dark consequences. So Samuel gathered us together and spelled out the harsh reality of human rule. Yet we stubbornly refused to change our minds. Our minds were made up. With a heavy heart, Samuel anointed Saul, the son of Kish, as our first leader. Saul was tall, handsome, and physically imposing, a strong warrior who made us feel secure. He looked exactly like the Savior we were searching for. Yet, as the sacred oil flowed, the ultimate question remained. Was this mortal man truly the answer to our deepest needs? At first, Saul united us, defeating our enemies and giving us a brief hope that we had found our way. He brought us together, but soon the cracks in our human-made solution began to show as Saul's confidence crumbled and his devotion faltered. His pride and desperate need for control swallowed the humility that was meant to guide us on our journey. His first massive failure came when he disobeyed the command to completely destroy the Amalekites, refusing to execute the judgment for their historic crimes against us. Instead, Saul arrogantly spared their king, Agag, keeping the best of their livestock for his own gain. In our own search for meaning, we often justify our actions just like Saul did before Samuel confronted him. Saul offered excuses, but Samuel stood firm, declaring that simple obedience to God is always better than empty sacrifice. The prophet announced Saul was rejected as king. The crushing weight of failing his divine purpose hit him, yet he clung desperately to the throne. As his reign spiraled downward, Saul grew intensely jealous of David, the young shepherd, whom Samuel had anointed to one day take his place. David won everyone over by slaying the giant Goliath and leading our armies to victory, which only fueled Saul's deep insecurity. Blinded by envy, the desperate king tried to murder David, chasing him relentlessly through the barren wilderness. Saul wanted to eliminate his rival, but David refused to strike back. Despite having multiple chances to kill him, he honored God's chosen leader. He respected the king who wanted him dead, mirroring the tragic struggle between our human ego and our divine calling. Saul lost his soul trying to protect his power, while David found his true purpose through deep humility and absolute trust in the divine. But our journey to find meaning is never easy.
David's path to the crown was marked by immense struggle and conflict. Violent civil wars erupted as rival factions fought for control, even after David had been anointed as our rightful leader. Saul's loyalists fought back fiercely. It was a brutal transition, reminding us that fulfilling our destiny always demands a struggle. Finally, David was crowned king, and the nation rejoiced. This massive shift from tribal judges to royal rulers marked a critical moment in our search for order and purpose. We traded direct divine guidance for a flesh and blood leader, hoping an earthly king could grant us the security we craved. Instead, we learned that earthly power is a crushing weight. Saul's tragic story warns us all. It reminds us of a fundamental truth about our search for meaning in this life. Without divine alignment, our hearts easily slip into pride. In demanding a human monarch, we rejected our true guide, choosing earthly rule over God. The monarchs who followed mirrored our own chaotic search for existence. But before these kings ever ruled, our lives were very different. We lived as scattered tribes under local judges. Long before sacred songs filled the temple, our existence was far simpler. There was only a boy with a sling facing a giant. He wasn't the first king, though. That tragic title belonged to Saul, the man we chose. He was tall and impressive, exactly what we demanded when we grew tired of seeking spiritual guidance. Saul showed us how we fail, but David would show us how we find our true calling. He was just a young Bethlehem shepherd. He was the youngest brother completely overlooked. Yet when the prophet arrived to choose our next leader, everything changed. God reminded us that while we focus on outward appearances, He judges the heart. Sacred oil poured over the boy, leaving his older brothers completely stunned. This blessing didn't bring instant fame. David simply returned to his sheep, waiting for his destiny to unfold. Finding our true purpose in this world takes patience. When Saul's mind began to unravel from his own failures, David was called. He came not to reign, but to heal. He played his harp to calm the king's tortured mind, using melody as his weapon. He learned early on how closely beauty and brutality walk together. But soon his gentle music would turn to bloody battle. The enemy sent a monstrous champion, Goliath, who stood in the valley and challenged us to a fight to the death. Instead of a warrior, we sent a boy. David refused the heavy armor offered to him, knowing he had to face his fate as himself. Armed with only 5 smooth stones, he struck down the giant. He won not with heavy weapons, but with simple, quiet faith and perfect aim. In an instant, the humble shepherd became a legend, rising to lead armies and write the songs of our souls. We sang of his triumphs, chanting that Saul had killed thousands, but David tens of thousands. It was meant to praise him, but to the paranoid king, those words sounded like a death sentence. Saul knew his reign was slipping away, and David was now a target. We often think finding our purpose is easy, but as you and I will see, David's path led straight into the dark wilderness. He hid in dark caves, faked madness to survive, and slowly gathered a band of desperate outcasts around him. Twice he could have killed Saul, yet he chose mercy over vengeance, showing us that our true humanity is found in grace, not power. The harsh desert shaped his soul, inspiring the timeless songs that still guide our own spiritual search today. Walking through the valley of the shadow of death was not just poetry, it was his reality. Meanwhile, Saul's journey met a tragic end. Bleeding out on the battlefield, our first king fell upon his own sword, while his noble son Jonathan perished right alongside him. Hearing of their deaths, David didn't celebrate his path to the throne. He tore his clothes and wept in genuine grief. He wrote a tragic lament for his fallen enemies. There was no joy in this victory, and he refused to just rush in and claim the crown. No royal carpet was rolled out. Instead, our ancestors faced a bitter civil war as Saul's family fought to keep power. For 7 long years, David ruled only his own tribe, waiting patiently in Hebron for his true calling.
As you and I look back, we see that time resolved what war could not, uniting us under one king and a shared purpose. The former shepherd now gripped the crown. In our search for a place to belong, his first move as king was deeply symbolic. He seized a small Jebusite fortress right on the tribal borders. Jerusalem belonged to no single tribe. It became the neutral heart, uniting a fractured people in their search for peace. David made this city his capital. From that moment on, we would know it as the City of David. Bringing the ark there, he danced with wild, unrefined joy. He wore simple linen, stripping away royal pride to find raw connection. His wife Michal watched from a window filled with disgust. Yet in that moment, David chose genuine raw devotion over the fake armor of a royal reputation. He would always trade empty status for deeper meaning. Next, David dreamed of building a permanent temple, a lasting home for the Creator who walked with him from pastures to palaces. But the prophet Nathan brought a different answer. David would not build it. His son would do it. Instead, God offered David a promise that reached far beyond temporary brick and stone. An everlasting kingdom. This was a promise of eternal human destiny, not just a dynasty. But even great leaders are not angels. Power tests the very purpose of our existence. David's trial came not on a battlefield, but on a roof. It was spring when kings usually fought, but David stayed behind. Looking down, he saw Bathsheba bathing. In an instant, silent desire twisted into an abuse of royal power. She obeyed. She became pregnant. Meanwhile, her husband Uriah the Hittite was away at the front, loyally fighting David's battles. To hide his crime, David brought Uriah back, hoping he would sleep with his wife. But Uriah refused such comfort, while his brothers in arms slept on the bare ground. Honor can be deeply inconvenient to a guilty conscience. David sent him back with a sealed letter, his own death warrant. Placed on the deadliest front line and abandoned by his own comrades, Uriah fell in battle. After her mourning, David married her. The dark truth could have remained buried forever beneath the grand ceremonies of the crown. But the prophet Nathan came to expose the truth. He told a story of a rich man who stole a poor family's only pet lamb. Furious at this cruelty, David demanded death. Nathan looked him in the eye and said, "You are that man." David collapsed inside. "I have sinned against the Lord." No excuses, no lies, just raw, painful honesty. Their infant child did not survive. But Bathsheba would later give birth to Solomon, ensuring that the promise of their future remained alive. Even this chosen family could not escape the chaos. David's children inherited his worst flaws, mirroring his own destructive passions. Amnon violated his sister Tamar, and David did nothing. So Absalom took matters into his own hands. Then Absalom targeted the throne itself, gradually stealing the people's loyalty. Once again, David was forced to run for his life, an aging king, weeping and betrayed by his own son. In the end, the rebellion was crushed by brutal force. Absalom's hair caught in an oak tree, and he was killed. Hearing this, the broken father wept, crying, "Oh, Absalom, my son, my son," a father's heartbreak echoing from a lonely throne. David returned, but the shadows never left him as his strength began to fade. Driven by pride, he counted his army, trusting numbers over faith. A terrible plague followed, his final great mistake. He bought a threshing floor on Mount Moriah to build an altar and stop the tragedy. This very ground would hold Solomon's future temple. Our deepest repentance can plant the seeds of tomorrow's hope. David named Solomon his heir, passing him blueprints for a temple he knew he would never live to see standing. And then he slipped away. Not on a battlefield, but peacefully in bed after ruling for 40 years. This isn't a story of moral perfection. It's about our shared human complexity.
David was a warrior and poet, sinner and saint, king and servant. His legacy shows us that our purpose isn't about being flawless, but staying faithful. When he fell, he got back up. When he failed, he wept real tears. And that is why we still remember him generations later. Not Saul, and not even Solomon, but David, the man who shared the Creator's own heart.
His story would echo down through time. Future voices would speak of a new king coming, a fresh branch from the line of Jesse, a shepherd who would finally bring us lasting peace. But that is a journey for another day. For now, David had led with courage. Under him, the nation found peace and prosperity. But like everything we build on this earth, it came with a heavy cost. His heart, though seeking the divine, was still capable of terrible darkness. Most of all, his secret affair with Bathsheba. She was the wife of Uriah, his most loyal soldier, and when Bathsheba became pregnant, the crisis began. David tried to hide his shame by sending Uriah to die on the dangerous front lines. But truth cannot be buried. The prophet Nathan confronted him directly, exposing the dark truth. The fallout would haunt the rest of David's days, yet he was not abandoned. David's heart remained open and repentant, always searching for a way back to connection. Still, the unified nation was starting to fall apart at the seams, torn by past mistakes and hidden rivalries. Even his own family, once a symbol of strength, began to collapse from within. We keep searching for our divine purpose, yet our homes fracture into chaos. The very family chosen to show us God's design now stood on the edge of total ruin. It was David's own son, Absalom, who sparked this rebellion. He was a striking man, handsome and highly capable. Outwardly, he had everything we strive for, charm and brilliant intellect, but inside, bitter anger burned against his father, ignited when his brother Amnon committed a terrible crime. Amnon assaulted his own sister, Tamar. This brutal injustice grew even worse because of how the king responded. David did absolutely nothing, refusing to seek justice for Tamar. Driven by a furious desire for vengeance, Absalom took action. He killed Amnon to avenge his sister. David's failure to heal his own broken home led to years of painful silence between father and son. The years dragged on until Absalom finally ended his long exile and returned to Jerusalem. He set out to win over the crowd standing at the city gates to offer them justice. Bit by bit, he built a massive following and crowned himself king, launching a war against his own father. The coup struck fast, and David, the fierce warrior who once feared nothing, had to run from Jerusalem with only his most loyal men. His soul was crushed by betrayal, torn between his love as a father and his duty as king during this agonizing escape. It was devastating. While David climbed the Mount of Olives, a man named Shimei from Saul's clan threw stones and yelled curses at him. One of David's soldiers wanted to strike Shimei down right then, but the king stopped him with quiet humility. "Let him curse," David said wearily. "Maybe God will see my pain and bring some good out of this." Even in his deepest agony, David refused to take revenge, choosing to trust that God would eventually make things right. The brutal conflict between father and son peaked in the wild forests of Ephraim. Absalom, with his famously long hair, got tangled in tree branches and was found hanging there completely trapped. David's commander Joab faced a brutal moral choice. Should he kill Absalom to end the war, or show mercy to the king's son? Joab chose death, and Absalom was killed, shattering David's heart completely when he heard the news. He wept in deep agony, crying, "Oh, my son, Absalom, my son, Absalom! I wish I had died instead of you, oh Absalom, my son!" This loss closed a terribly dark chapter for David, but it marked a massive shift for the entire nation. The war was over, but the deep cracks in the kingdom had only grown worse. When David returned, peace didn't follow.
As we look at this broken nation, we see a people divided, experiencing the bitter reality of turning away from their true purpose.
The land itself bore the scars of their rebellion. David, now old and weary, desperately tried to bring peace back to his people. He reconciled with those who had turned against him, even embracing his commander Joab, who had led the forces that destroyed Absalom's army. Still, the deep wounds lingered, and David's final years were filled with constant family drama and conflict. Another son, Adonijah, tried to steal the crown while David was still alive, but the frail, dying king formally named Solomon as his successor, his son with Bathsheba to be the next king. Solomon, exceptionally wise for his age, took the throne, starting a brand new era for the nation. David spent his last days preparing his son for the heavy burden of ruling. He passionately urged Solomon to walk in God's ways, keep his holy laws, and build the grand temple that David had dreamed of constructing his entire life. As he died, David spoke of our sacred covenant with God, recalling the promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, stressing how vital it was to stay true to our Creator. David's rule, though deeply scarred by his own failures and a painful family rebellion, was incredibly important. His passionate heart and fierce love for his people, and his deep grief over his mistakes, created a powerful legacy that would echo for generations. Even as the kingdom stood divided, a glimmer of hope for healing survived. This story shows us the messy reality of who we are, caught in a struggle between faith and failure. We bounce between strength and weakness, wisdom and folly, proving that even our greatest heroes are broken and desperately need a savior. Yet even in our darkest times of betrayal, our ultimate purpose can still be realized through God. As Solomon took power, entering a new era, these tough lessons would guide the nation's search for its true destiny. But we still have to ask, can the deep divisions in our lives ever truly be healed? Can we ever be restored to what we were meant to be? Or are we destined to fall apart under the heavy weight of our own mistakes? Solomon's rule started with blood. He inherited much more than a crown. He got a kingdom weighed down by bitter enemies, rivals, and the deep wounds left by his father's chaotic rule. Before he could find peace, he had to silence the ghosts of the past forever. Solomon did this with cold, brutal precision. Adonijah, his older brother and chief rival, asked to marry Abishag, the young woman who had cared for David. On the surface, it seemed harmless enough, but Solomon knew it was a play for power. Taking a dead king's concubine was a quiet coup attempt back then. Solomon acted immediately. Adonijah was put to death, and so was Joab, the legendary general. So falls Shimei, who cursed David but received mercy. One by one we sweep away past chaos, trying to secure our fragile existence. Only when the old order is buried can Solomon truly begin. In our quest for meaning, he builds his reign on wisdom, not warfare. Offered anything by the divine, Solomon doesn't ask for wealth, long life, or victory. He seeks something deeper for our shared journey. He asks for a discerning heart to tell good from evil. It is the ultimate human request. In return, he receives everything he did not ask for: unimagined wealth, lasting peace, global fame, and a legendary reputation that echoes across the earth to distant kings. Our stories of him grow. Two mothers appear, both claiming the same newborn child. As we watch, Solomon listens to find the truth of human love. He calls for a sword. "Cut the baby in two," he commands. One woman gasps in terror, willing to give up her child just to save its life. The other coldly agrees. Solomon gives the baby to the merciful woman, revealing true maternal love. We stand in awe of this deep understanding. A legend is born. Yet in our pursuit of security, Solomon builds more than just wisdom. He starts forging political alliances, dozens of them, through strategic marriages. Pharaoh's daughter joins his home alongside Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, and Sidonian women and Hittite wives. With them come pagan gods and altars. What started as clever human diplomacy slowly erodes our connection to the divine. At first, we barely notice. Solomon is busy building our ultimate physical answer to the divine, the temple itself. David dreamed of this for years, a permanent home for God, a physical anchor for our restless souls. But David was defined by war. It fell to his son, a man of peace, to raise the temple walls. For 7 long years, tens of thousands of us labored to build this holy sanctuary. We cut stones in distant quarries to keep the Temple Mount silent. No iron tools rang out, preserving a quiet space to meet the divine. We lined the inner walls with fragrant cedar and pure gold carving designs of palms and flowers and heavenly beings. The Holy of Holies forms a perfect cube, the absolute center of our spiritual search. Inside, golden angels shelter the Ark of the Covenant beneath their wings. When our great work is finished, we carry the sacred chest inside. As the priests step back, a thick, heavy cloud fills the space. We cannot even stand. God's glory has arrived physically among us, and Solomon speaks to the mystery. God chose to dwell in thick darkness, a profound mystery we utter amidst glittering gold and rising smoke. But the temple is not enough for our restless ambition. Solomon builds entire cities, vast storehouses, stables, grand palaces, and busy seaports. We build a massive navy and conquer trade routes stretching all the way from the Gulf of Aqaba to the gates of Egypt. Gold pours in from Ophir alongside spices and precious stones. Our world throbs with commerce, hoping wealth will finally satisfy us. Enemies are subdued and tribute flows in. For 40 years we experience a rare era of absolute peace. It is our golden age, but built on heavy human costs. We suffer under forced labor just to sustain this dream. Taxes crush us. Resentment simmers as 10 of our 12 tribes feel forgotten and exploited. We are overworked and ignored. Jerusalem shines, but the provinces grow restless. And then there are his wives. Solomon takes 700 wives and 300 concubines, bringing with them shrines to other gods, like Molech and Chemosh. The king who built God's temple now builds high places for idols. Slowly, his heart drifts away from the ultimate truth we seek. It happens in tiny steps, small compromises in our daily lives. But over time, our true purpose gets lost. The wisdom Solomon once begged for, that clear human discernment, begins to fade. And the warning signs start as mere whispers. God warns him that our fragile kingdom will fracture under his son. Out of respect for David, judgment waits, but we cannot escape it. Soon, old threats awaken. Hadad, an Edomite prince who survived the purges decades ago, rises in the south to challenge our peace. Rezin strikes from the north. Then comes Jeroboam, a rising leader who threatens to fracture our unity. He flees into exile after a prophet reveals he will rule 10 tribes. Meanwhile, Solomon faces the inevitable decay of his own old age. His court shines, but the inner light of his soul is gone. His achievements were vast, yet his moral failure is catastrophic. We remember him as the wisest of us, yet he could not master his own heart. In his grief, he writes of our struggle. Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and love songs. Some beautiful, some filled with our deepest, agonizing questions about why we exist. Everything is meaningless, he writes, like chasing the wind. It is the weary cry of humanity realizing that possessing everything still leaves us empty. Solomon dies, leaving behind a golden temple, a full treasury, and a son, Rehoboam, to inherit our fragile earthly kingdom. We look stable, but deep fault lines have opened.
Soon everything we built so carefully, our temples, shrines, and alliances, will fracture. Our earthly glory begins to crumble. This reign was our absolute peak, yet it marks the start of our inevitable downfall. Wisdom gave us hope, but unchecked power left him spiritually blind. His story embodies the duality of our human struggle, triumph and tragedy. The shadow of his choices stretches far beyond the grave as his son Rehoboam now takes the throne. His reign starts with hope, but quickly spirals into the division that defines us. Crushed by Solomon's heavy taxes and forced labor, our ancestors approached Rehoboam desperate for relief. Their plea was simple: lighten our load, make life bearable. Wise elders urged the new king to serve the people, easing their pain, to secure their hearts. But we often reject wisdom, and Rehoboam turned instead to his reckless peers, the young men he grew up with. Seeking power instead of purpose, they urged him to dominate, force the people to bow, and drive their suffering even deeper. Denying our basic human cry for mercy, Rehoboam issued a cruel decree that sealed his doom. "My father beat you with whips, but I will scourge you with scorpions." His words shattered our hope. The nation fractured. 10 of the 12 tribes rejected David's line, instantly breaking away to find their own path. They built a northern kingdom under Jeroboam, leaving Judah diminished in the south. Our dream of unity was fading, replaced by borders born of pride. The promise of a united nation lay shattered. We who were meant to walk together under heaven stood divided in both land and spirit. Yet Jeroboam faced his own crisis of security. Fearing his people would journey south to Jerusalem to worship, seeking the ultimate source of their existence, he crafted 2 golden calves, placing them in Bethel and Dan. "Here are your gods, Israel," he boldly proclaimed. It was a political trap, distracting us from our true Creator. He built rival altars and festivals, leading our ancestors away from their divine purpose and into empty worship. And so the northern kingdom plunged into darkness, abandoning the very covenant that gave them life. Down south, Rehoboam watched his inheritance crumble. His reign became a painful reminder of how easily we lose our grip on peace. The people of Judah also drifted from truth, Rehoboam's reign becoming a faint, empty echo of Solomon's former glory, completely lacking the divine wisdom and vision we desperately need. Before long, he too embraced empty idols openly. Pagan altars spread across Judah. Yet amidst this moral decay, they still held the temple, that powerful physical reminder that the divine still desired to dwell among us. They clung to a mere shadow of the ancient truths that once defined their existence. But our connection to the sacred grew weaker by the day. This split was no longer just about politics. It was a deep spiritual fracture, mirroring our own broken hearts. As centuries dragged on, both kingdoms staggered forward, wrestling with their own existential shadows. In the north, power shifted through brutal violence. A parade of corrupt kings followed Jeroboam. Later, Omri seized the throne through bloodshed, establishing a dynasty that would guide our ancestors further into the dark for generations. Then came his son Ahab, one of the most infamous figures in our history, defined by open rebellion against the source of all life. His marriage to the Phoenician princess Jezebel dragged Israel deeper into the hollow worship of Baal. True voices were silenced, leaving us searching in the dark. Yet, in relentless mercy, the divine raised up prophets to speak truth directly to our corrupted leaders. Elijah, a fierce voice of truth, rose to challenge the king and queen head-on. On Mount Carmel, he called down fire from heaven, reminding us all who holds the ultimate answer to our existence. But human pride is stubborn, and they refused to change. Meanwhile, in the south, David's line kept moving forward. Rehoboam's son Abijah ruled next, but his reign only brought more chaos and empty worship. Then came his son Asa, bringing a brief moment of hope. He tore down our self-made idols and renewed the ancient covenant, bringing stability to Judah. But keeping human hearts aligned with truth is a constant struggle. False gods had taken deep root in our hearts, defying all attempts to remove them. The divide between north and south only grew deeper and more hostile. With each generation, the northern kingdom slipped further away from the light of its true purpose. Though Judah clung to the covenant, our once unified nation was now just a distant, fading memory, fractured beyond repair. Yet prophets kept calling out to us, warning of the cost of losing our way. Now a dark shadow loomed over Israel. The Assyrian Empire, a brutal machine of war from the northeast, turned its eyes toward us. Their conquest was swift and merciless. Weakened by our own moral decay, we fell easily to their power. In 722 BC, Samaria fell, and 10 tribes were swept into permanent exile. The northern kingdom vanished, leaving only Judah standing in the wreckage. David's line survived in Jerusalem. The temple still stood, but even Judah could not escape the consequences of forgetting our true source. Voices of warning pleaded with us to return to the divine before it was too late. It was an era defined by deep division, endless distractions, and the slow unraveling of who we were meant to be. This rupture was a mirror of our own broken souls, reflecting the ultimate tragedy of losing our purpose. The once great nation lay shattered beyond recognition. Only Judah remained a lone sentinel, clinging to a fading hope, while the memory of our true potential faded into the dark. We were fractured, and the air hung thick with smoke not from sacred worship, but from the burning of our own empty false answers. It was the beginning of the end. In the north, our search for meaning splintered. 10 tribes under Jeroboam broke away defiantly, trying to carve out their own destiny separate from the rest of us. We wanted to build our own temples, worship our own gods, and crown our own kings. But this detour brought a dark inheritance. Pure instability. Our self-made kingdoms fall quickly. But as you and I will see, our Creator refused to let us wander in silence. So the prophets arrived to shake us awake, not with comforting rituals, but as wild-eyed messengers roaring like thunder before an approaching storm. First came Elijah, whose very name was a direct challenge to our lost wandering. During King Ahab's reign, he demanded we look back to our true Creator. Ahab was leading the north far astray. He had married Jezebel, a Phoenician princess who promised us answers through the worship of Baal. Under her sway, we fell deep into idolatry, building temples to foreign gods, desperately hoping these empty idols would finally give us purpose. Our original sacred promise faded into distant memory. Then Elijah stepped out from an unknown wasteland to find us. Dressed in camel hair and fed by ravens, he did not seek our permission. He walked straight into the king's palace, declaring that no rain would fall until we remembered who made us. Then he vanished, leaving us in a scorched wasteland. Without our source, our fields withered and died. While our leaders raged, Elijah survived in hiding, sustained by wild birds and then by a starving widow who trusted the ultimate giver of life. We witnessed quiet miracles of endless oil and flour, proving our existence is sustained by grace. But then tragedy struck when a boy died. Elijah breathed life back into him, showing us who holds our breath. Yet our true wake-up call was still to come when he returned after 3 years to face Ahab. He challenged our false prophets, 450 of Baal and 400 of Asher, to a direct contest on Mount Carmel to prove who truly rules our existence. 2 altars. Whichever God answered with fire was our true source. All day the priests of Baal screamed and bled desperately, begging their silent creation for a sign. Nothing. No answer came to define our purpose. Elijah mocked our foolishness, asking if their God was asleep or busy elsewhere. Only silence. Then Elijah rebuilt the altar of our Creator, soaking the sacrifice with water to remove all doubt. He prayed once and fire fell, consuming everything. Seeing this, we fell on our faces, finally remembering our purpose, crying out that the Lord is our God. It was a rare moment of existential clarity. But our breakthrough was short-lived. Jezebel quickly swore to hunt down the messenger of truth. Terrified, Elijah fled into a dark cave, seeking answers in his despair. He waited to hear from the Creator, but not in the violent wind, nor the earthquake or fire, but in a gentle whisper. You and I must realize that turning point loud spectacles never truly change our hearts. Our path shifted. Elijah would not live to see us fully return to our Creator, but he would pass the torch to a successor. Enter Elisha, a farmer who burned his plow and left 12 yoke of oxen behind, completely abandoning his past to pursue our sacred calling.
His name promised divine rescue. While Elijah brought fire to our rebellion, Elisha brought healing to our pain. Walking with rulers and raising the dead, he purified out poisoned water, multiplied oil for the poor, and cured Naaman, a foreign general, of leprosy. When Naaman tried to pay him, Elisha refused, showing us that true holiness cannot be bought. But Elisha's story also forced us to confront the corrupting influence of human power. He advised and condemned our decaying rulers, watching as we slid further into violence and idolatry. Yet in our desperate search for self-rule, we refused to listen. By Elisha's death, our society was completely unraveling. We turned to violence, assassinating our rulers in quick succession. Still, the Creator kept calling out to us through new messengers, all repeating the same urgent plea. Remember why you exist, and return to the covenant. We were told to stop crushing each other, but we had turned inward. We burdened the poor and abandoned our shared humanity. We built ivory palaces on the backs of workers, replacing genuine righteousness with empty, hollow rituals that could never satisfy our souls. Only empty ceremony remained. So new messengers rose to challenge us not with miracles, but as poets and prosecutors of our hearts. Amos, a simple shepherd, arrived with a brutal indictment of our superficial lives. He had no patience for our fake piety, and his message thundered through our towns. I despise your empty festivals, says the Lord. Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a stream. He condemned us for selling out the needy for silver and silencing the truth. Then Hosea arrived, exposing the deep heartbreak at the core of our rebellion. Hosea was told to marry an unfaithful woman, turning his own family into a painful mirror of how we had abandoned our Creator. Yet he bought her back and loved her anyway. Through Hosea, our Creator pleaded like a broken-hearted lover, asking how he could ever completely give up on us. His compassion grew warm and tender. It was the voice of a God with every right to destroy us, who chose instead to weep. Yet our end drew near. The Assyrian Empire loomed on our horizon, a brutal force of iron and fire. Our prophets saw the coming storm and warned us plainly. They warned us that destruction was coming from the north. Yet a quiet hope remained. We would survive and our sacred purpose would not be lost. Our original promise would not die and our true purpose would endure. But for now, our skies were darkening. We had heard the warnings, yet we refused to change. We had witnessed firefall and tasted divine mercy, yet we stubbornly chose to seek our purpose in power, wealth, and hollow idols. So the final warnings went out. The prophets were not fortune tellers. They were exposing the truth of our current choices. They showed us what must happen if we refused to change, but in our pride, we did not listen. So history marched in with iron chariots and exile silencing our altars.
Yet as you and I look back, we see they planted a deeper seed of hope within us, a memory, a possibility, a still small voice guiding our search. The ruthless Assyrian Empire threatened to destroy everything. As you and I look back at our search for purpose, Israel had built a thriving land, but faced ruin, abandoning their divine connection.
Prophets warned we were losing our way, but humanity ignored the calls to return to our true purpose. We had strayed too far from the path laid out for us, and the moment of reckoning arrived in 722 BCE. Unrelenting forces under King Shalmaneser, the fifth, descended from the north. Our northern tribes, fractured and weakened by internal conflict, stood completely vulnerable. Having abandoned the faith that gave us meaning, we had no chance. Samaria, our stronghold, was about to fall. It collapsed after enduring a grueling 3-year siege. Our people were captured, dragged into exile, and scattered across a vast, ruthless empire. Our quest for home shattered. Forced to live in lands not our own, our 10 northern tribes vanished into history, leaving us to wonder if our purpose had vanished too. This ended the kingdom of Israel. These 10 tribes, remembered as the lost tribes, became a symbol of humanity's search for lost identity. They were consumed by an empire's relentless appetite for dominance, our people absorbed into the machine of Assyria. Our unique identity was eroded and lost in the shifting sands of time. The land promised to our ancestors stood as a quiet question mark, a barren testament to our failure to live in alignment with the divine. This collapse was far more than a simple political defeat. It was a profound existential catastrophe. We had established our entire existence on a sacred covenant, a promise to live by a higher divine law. Yet our leaders, from King Jeroboam onward, turned their backs on that covenant, straying from the path of ultimate truth. They built altars to false gods and let injustice spread unchecked, leading us away from truth. For years, prophets foretold this tragic downfall. Elijah, Elisha, Amos, and Hosea begged us to turn back and find our true purpose, but we refused to listen to their warnings. Hosea, the final prophet to speak to our northern kingdom, poured out his heart in deep existential anguish, pleading with us to return to God. His message carried the weight of painful love, comparing our search for cheap idols to a wife's deep betrayal, a betrayal too serious to ignore. Yet we remained deaf to the call, our hearts hardening as we lost our way. Our wrongdoing had become too overwhelming to reverse. The warnings went unheeded, and the destruction of our kingdom became unavoidable. This conquest was more than the end of a kingdom. Today, you and I can see it was a warning, a harsh call to awaken our sleeping souls to reality. It stood as a harsh reminder of what happens when we turn our backs on the divine. We in Judah were also living on borrowed time. Though we experienced fleeting moments of faithfulness, we were not exempt from the consequences. Soon our prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah would issue their own urgent calls, warning us that the very same fate that crushed Israel could easily become our own. The massive Assyrian Empire, despite its vastness, was not invincible. In the grand sweep of history, its reign was short-lived. But for our lost brothers, the fall was final. Our land no longer belonged to us. Our once powerful kingdom was scattered, becoming a memory of what we once were and a lesson for our descendants. It marked a massive turning point in our spiritual journey. It represented the precise moment when our nation's identity began to fracture. While we in Judah continued to inhabit our land, the kingdom of Israel was lost to the pages of history. The pressing question for humanity became, what would happen to the divine promises to our ancestors now that our covenant was shattered? Had our rejection of the divine path caused those promises to crumble? Yet in our darkest hour, a glimmer of hope persisted. The promises made to our patriarchs were not invalidated by our failure. The Creator who had called Abraham from Ur and promised him descendants would never abandon his word to us. Though we had failed, the divine plan for humanity would not be derailed. The light of the covenant kept shining in unexpected ways. Our great collapse was a moment of profound loss, but it was simultaneously preparing us for something greater. For although our northern kingdom would never be restored, we in the south would carry the legacy of our search forward, from Judah through a line of kings leading to David's ultimate descendant. The Messiah would emerge. Our tragedy would give way to a deeper understanding of divine love and mercy, proving we can find ultimate redemption in the darkest places. We who had been completely lost would one day be found. For now, however, our people were scattered. Our land was occupied by conquerors, our cities in ruins. Yet even in this exile, the divine was not finished with us. Our story would continue in ways we could not yet perceive. Though we were lost, we were not forgotten. Our northern kingdom was gone, swallowed by empire. Our cities shattered, our people scattered to the four winds. 10 tribes vanished from our story. But in the south we still stood, smaller, poorer, but breathing. The temple still rose above Jerusalem, a flickering flame in our existential darkness. And into this uneasy calm walked voices like thunder carrying the weight of divine speech. These were our prophets, guides in our search for truth. Not magicians, but messengers of a restless, wounded Creator. We didn't like them, and we didn't trust them. Most of the time we didn't believe them. But they spoke anyway, confronting our leaders and priests, because silence was never an option. Shouting to us in the streets what we didn't want to hear. This covenant, giving us purpose, has terms. We broke them, and there is a price. And yet, in the ash of judgment, they always left room for hope. Today, you and I can look back at the 8th century BCE, when our ancestors witnessed the rise of these voices, pointing us toward our ultimate purpose. In our search for meaning, one giant voice guided us. Isaiah, son of Amos, speaking in poetry and visions, he offered riddles. A royal prophet walking with kings, standing in the holy sanctuary to help us find our way. His quest spanned the reigns of King Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. We struggled through a dark, turbulent era of political threats and internal decay. His opening words shattered our comfort. Hear, O heavens, and listen, earth, God has spoken. We drowned ourselves in rituals but remained completely dry of justice. We gave offerings while widows starved. Our incense filled the temple, but our streets ran red. Isaiah exposed our deep hypocrisy with brutal clarity. We learned that our Creator wanted no burnt offerings. Our true purpose was broken pride, changed hearts and hands that help. Learn to do good, seek justice, rescue the oppressed, defend orphans, and plead for widows. We realized our purpose was never private. It had to be lived on the ground, not just chanted in a temple. He saw our cruelty not just as human failure, but as treason against our divine purpose. Yet he offered us more than criticism. He gave us vision. First, he warned us that our ruin was swift and inevitable, but then he helped us look past the smoke to see a beautiful ultimate hope. A new branch from Jesse's stump, a suffering servant king. He showed us a peace so deep that lions lie with lambs and children play safely near hidden snakes. He saw our present failure and our glorious potential. In that tension, he spoke words that still echo through our long journey far beyond ancient Judah. Shaping centuries of our history, faith, and philosophy, his visions became the backbone of our deepest desires. The image of the suffering servant haunted our future. His dreams of peace shaped our prayers, and we were not left with just one guide. Next came Micah, a rural prophet for the common man. From the countryside of Moreshth, far from Isaiah's royal courts, Micah spoke for the poorest of us. warning that injustice was choking the land and our future. His words cut closer to our bone. He exposed our corrupt cities, our bribed courts, and how the powerful trampled the poor working the land. We coveted fields and stole them. Micah saw the evil we committed in the shadows and dragged it into the light. Yet he also voiced our ultimate answer, a clear cry of what our Creator desires to do: justice, love, kindness, and walk humbly with our God. A single whisper summarizing 1,000 years of our religious search. We learned that while ritual matters, ritual without humility leaves us completely hollow. We saw that justice without love is tyranny. These prophets weren't destroying our faith. They were restoring its spine. Meanwhile, as our kings came and went, and as great empires loomed and waned, another guide rose to meet our pain. His name was Jeremiah, shaped not by privilege, but by deep sorrow. He was too young, he thought, and tried to run, but his Creator answered with the ultimate truth of our existence. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Born in Anathoth among priests, he became our weeping prophet, a man whose deep suffering and very life became a symbol of what lay ahead for us. Using broken cisterns, shattered jars, and diseased figs, he turned his prophecies into dramatic signs of our broken existence. He watched us slide toward ruin in a slow spiral, clinging to false peace, foreign alliances, and a tragic denial of our own actions. We foolishly thought our temple made us untouchable, that God's presence was a shield for our corruption. But Jeremiah shattered our delusions. Do not trust in deceptive words, saying, "This is the temple of the Lord." We made the temple our idol, using holy things to excuse our lifestyle. The Babylonians were coming. Jeremiah saw the hard truth we refused to face. Our collapse was not only coming, it was entirely deserved. Yet, in our darkest hour, he never stopped hoping. A day is coming, he promised, when God will make a new covenant, unlike the one we broke, no longer etched on cold stone, but a covenant written directly on our hearts, a personal connection, not guarded by kings, but carried inside the soul of every person. He lived to see our worst nightmare, Jerusalem, burning. Dragged to Egypt against his will, he died in exile, uncelebrated by the very people he tried to save. Yet his words survived. His tears, inked on scrolls, became a vital part of the soul of our scripture. By the late 7th century before the Common Era, we had been warned repeatedly. From Jerusalem to the fields of Moreseth, our prophets shouted, whispered, and wept. They pleaded with us to change, offering a way back, but our leaders remained stubborn, trusting in corrupt politics, while Babylon marched closer and closer. We had prophets, but would we listen? That question echoes as you and I watch the storm roll in and Nebuchadnezzar's armies march across our land. Their heavy steps brought doom closer to the city, holding the last remnants of our glory. Jerusalem, once our symbol of divine favor, now lay completely vulnerable. With walls weakened by our own division, we clung desperately to a promise that felt increasingly distant. The siege began with relentless force. Trapped inside, desperate and starving, we could only watch as Nebuchadnezzar's Babylonian forces tightened their grip around us. For generations we were warned, first by Isaiah and later by Jeremiah, that this exact moment would strike if we did not turn from our sins and listen to God. Yet we remained stubborn, foolishly hoping for miraculous protection. Now the terrible prophecy was unfolding before our eyes in the bitterest of realities. In 586 before the Common Era, our walls were breached. The great temple Solomon built, the very heart of our faith and identity, was reduced to ashes. Our golden altar, the Ark of the Covenant, and the sacred vessels that once held our offerings, all of it was shattered and lost. The very center of our worship was desecrated,
plunging us into a profound, suffocating grief. It felt as if time itself bent, and all our ancient promises turned to dust. We were dragged away, stripped of honor, bound in heavy chains. Our strongest, youngest, and wisest were marched toward distant Babylon. Among us were artisans, leaders, priests, and elders, the very lifeblood and soul of our beloved Jerusalem. The rest of us were left to struggle on the land without our temple, our king, or any vision of who we once were. Our long exile had begun. The fall of Judah, like Israel before it, was no simple defeat. It was the painful consequence of humanity losing its way on our search for meaning. We chose the fleeting power of our own idols over eternal truth. Yet this forced exile, our painful journey from the familiar into the dark unknown, would become the very crucible that transformed our understanding of existence. Once free, we now found ourselves in chains. Yet within that dark bondage, a deeper understanding of who we are began to emerge. We had relied on physical borders, but now we had to learn that the divine presence isn't locked in one place. Even in our displacement, hope remained with us. This wandering was not just punishment. It was a crucible to refine our purpose. Stranded in Babylon, we faced a terrifying future, severed from our home, our sacred temples, and our familiar ways of life. We lived as captives among strangers, surviving a harsh and foreign land. And yet, in that displacement, in that foreign silence, we sought new ways to preserve our identity. Synagogues were born, sacred spaces where we gathered to read the ancient words, study, and pray. Stripped of our grand temple rituals, we learned to lean on the sacred word itself, finding meaning through shared stories and earnest prayers. This displacement became our great existential reawakening, teaching us the profound value of community in our search for connection. We learned to share our faith together, even without a king or temple. Yet guiding voices still echoed. Jeremiah, weeping over ruins, stayed behind to witness the fall. Though he had warned us for years, it was Ezekiel who now spoke to us in Babylon, bringing a vision of hope to our broken souls. He saw a valley of dry bones, a vision speaking directly to our deep need for restoration. Though our collective body lay scattered and broken, the divine would breathe new life into us. This was not just about returning home, but an awakening of our very soul. We would return, yes, but transformed. Our understanding of who we are and why we exist had shifted. The trial forged us into a new creation. No longer bound to mere brick and soil, we discovered an infinite presence that journeys with us anywhere. Yet as the decades crept by, our heavy grief remained. But even in our deepest sorrow, we began to notice a tiny spark of light on our horizon. The Persian Empire rose to dominance, shifting the path of our destiny. King Cyrus issued a royal decree that would alter the very course of human history. He declared that we could return home to rebuild what was lost. Once scattered and broken, we finally began to find our way back. The long march back to Jerusalem was grueling, but our hearts were filled with purpose. We were not just returning to a plot of land, but to our sacred calling to heal what had been broken. Yet, as we began rebuilding, fierce opposition arose from every side. Neighboring tribes feared our return and tried to stop us. Despite the immense challenges, we stood strong, refusing to give up. We were driven by a vision of our restored purpose and a renewed covenant. This entire cycle of fall, exile, and return mirrors our own human story of devastation and hope. It is the epic story of us being broken and lost, only to find our ultimate restoration through a grace higher than ourselves. The trial did not destroy our faith, it refined it. It forced us to confront our failures, admit our deep need for the divine, and realize that our purpose is not bound to a temple, but travels with us always. This defeat was not our end, but a crucial chapter in our ongoing journey. It was a painful moment of cosmic reckoning, but also a beautiful window of unmerited grace. Returning home, we finally realized our story is not defined by our worst failures, but by the relentless faithfulness that kept us alive. Our history, though stained by tragedy, became the very bedrock of our new beginning. Rebuilding our lives and our sacred places marked a profound new chapter in our search for divine connection. Yet even as we returned, the dark shadows of our past mistakes trailed behind us. We had been warned, the old prophets had spoken, but the wilderness taught us a deeper truth. No matter how far we wander or how broken we become, there is always a path home. In this enduring hope, our collective journey moves forward toward a future where we, fully restored, will stand in the light of our true purpose. By the rivers of Babylon we sat and wept, not as a metaphor, but in a raw grief that carved deep lines into our very bones. Our holy city had fallen, and with it our entire world. The golden temple of Solomon was now nothing but smoldering ash. The sacred ark, our symbol of divine connection, vanished. The royal line we thought would last forever was completely shattered. Our promise felt broken. What followed was a dark exile of the soul. Our conquerors did not just defeat us, they dismantled our world. They tore our culture apart. This was a strategy to erase us. They took our thinkers, priests, and artists, leaving only the poorest behind. They tried to drain our memories and erase our identity. Yet this absolute ruin became the crucible of our survival. This exile forged a new faith from our wreckage. In Lamentations we find our rawest grief written in 5 agonizing poems by someone who watched it happen. The voice is maternal, crying for our ruined city, like a mother grieving for a once radiant daughter, now humiliated, stumbling through the ash. We cried out in disbelief, spiraling through deep mourning, shame, and bitter questions of why we exist. We searched for hope through structured alphabetic poems. Even in our deepest chaos, we craved order to make sense of our pain. In this dark wilderness, songs became our lifelines. Not praises, but raw protests, crying out, "How do we sing when we are completely lost?" We refused to be silent. Though stripped of our lands, our temple, and our freedom, we clung fiercely to our voice and our search for meaning. These songs are the darkest we have ever sung, unmasking our raw anger. We remembered home not with quiet peace, but with burning rage. Yet through the darkness, our guiding voices remained. Jeremiah, dragged to Egypt, still spoke truth to our suffering. Stranded in exile, we searched for meaning through Ezekiel's surreal visions, whirring wheels, dry bones, breathing a future temple. Then a new prophetic voice echoed our deepest yearning. "Comfort, comfort my people," the voice pleaded. For us, this tender message sparked a massive revolution in how we understood our existence. Exile forced us to face an existential crisis. If the divine truly ruled, why did Babylon crush us? With our home ruined and our people scattered, how could we still matter? The answer we found redefined our entire purpose. We realized the divine was not confined to one land, but ruled all human history. Babylon was not our end, it was just an instrument of ultimate justice. Our own greed, arrogance, and moral failures had brought this misery. Yet suffering did not mean abandonment. Finding this truth is what allowed us to survive. Our darkness was not the final chapter, but a crucible of purpose. This shift completely reshaped our journey to understand why we exist. Stranded without a temple, we turned inward, finding meaning in sacred texts, community, and memory. Gatherings replaced grand altars, and prayer became our sacrifice. Sacred words became our anchor, our keepers of text became holy, and our displaced leaders began writing down our shared human story. We pieced together the memories that explain who we are, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. These sacred texts, forged in our deepest suffering, became far more than old heritage. The tales of our ancestors became a vital anchor for our survival.
They gave us hope and a solid identity in a hostile world. Stripped of political power, we began to dream of a grand cosmic resolution. We envisioned a reality where the Creator would intervene directly, bypassing human kings through cosmic upheaval. These desperate dreams laid the groundwork for apocalyptic visions that would sustain us for centuries to come. In our captivity, holding on to our unique way of life became our ultimate resistance. Our rituals were acts of defiance, a refusal to let our existence be erased. Paradoxically, losing our kingdom is what saved our true purpose. Our longing for home grew deeper in its absence, making the promise of meaning even sweeter. Yet our profound grief remained unhealed. Trauma was woven into our songs, our lineage, and our building plans for a future home. Our new sanctuary lacked its former physical beauty, but it stood as a monument to our endurance. Meanwhile, many of us tried to build lives in captivity. We built houses, raised families, adopted foreign tongues, and found worldly success. Yet some of us grew deeply bitter, wondering if this was all we were meant for. Some grew comfortable and chose to stay. But for many, the ache for our true spiritual home never stopped calling us back. Even from afar, our dream of restoration kept us going. It was not just a location on a map. It meant dignity, healing, and true belonging. Our songs echoed this agonizing grief, vowing never to forget our origin. This painful, temple-less season became the defining moment of our spiritual journey. It was right there, deep in our displacement, that our faith evolved. We transformed from a localized kingdom into a resilient, globally scattered people of faith. We became a people anchored in sacred texts and memory capable of surviving anywhere. This painful displacement did not destroy us. It defined our purpose. It saved us. Through our tears, we remembered. In the quiet, we listened. And there we penned the timeless truths that outlived worldly empires. Finally, the dark shadow of our long despair began to lift. Power shifted and the Persian Empire rose to conquer our Babylonian captors. Under King Cyrus, we witnessed a rare tolerance that aligned with our ancient hope. It felt like the universe was answering our cries. Scattered across foreign lands, we heard the call to go home, even though our city lay in total ruins. Our protective walls lay smashed, our sanctuary defiled, and our home reduced to dust. Yet amid this utter ruin, our search for meaning found new life. A new hope began to blossom. The promises of old were still burning, giving us the courage to rebuild. Then Cyrus, acting on his own vision and prophecy, decreed that we were free to journey back to our homeland. He even offered to fund our new temple, marking a massive milestone in our quest. We were no longer hopeless wanderers without a place to belong. Led by Zerubbabel, we began our long, fateful journey back to the land of promise. Guided by a royal descendant, we marched in waves, undertaking a second exodus to find our ultimate place in this world. The path was brutal, and our homeland lay ruined fields, choked with weeds, cities abandoned. We were forced to face our grim reality. But united, we did what humans do best. We built. Our first priority was the temple, nearly 70 years after it had fallen from its former glory. Under our leaders, we finally laid the foundations. This sacred site was far more than just wood and stone to us. It represented the divine living among us, a testament to our eternal covenant and the unbreakable resilience of our human spirit. Our progress was painfully slow, constantly threatened by hostile neighbors who wanted to stop our efforts to rebuild our lives. They feared our potential,
sending false accusations to the king and trying to terrify our workers into quitting. Yet, driven by a deep sense of divine purpose, we kept pushing forward as new voices rose to inspire us. Haggai and Zechariah spoke to our souls during this challenging era. Haggai urged us to keep working, telling us not to lose heart over humble beginnings. He promised that a greater unseen glory was waiting for us down the road. Zechariah filled us with dreams of ultimate restoration and triumph. Yet even with these inspired words, rebuilding our shattered existence remained a grueling, agonizingly slow process.
Exhausted, we had to face the brutal reality of our struggle. Yet we finally tasted the joy of coming home. As we laid the foundations, our cries of pure praise filled the sky. We wept as we finally touched home soil, our dream realized. But we quickly saw that rebuilding a temple was only the first step in finding our true purpose. Our restoration was far from complete. The land lay scarred, and we still wandered in search of ultimate guidance. We had returned, yet our souls remained unanchored. To guide our quest, a learned priest named Ezra stepped forward to lead this next phase of our recovery. As a brilliant scholar of the law, he sought to realign our lives with divine truth, deeply committed to anchoring our fragile spirits to a lasting sacred purpose. More of us returned in a second wave, working not just to rebuild stone walls, but to reconstruct the very spiritual core of why we existed. His mission spoke directly to our existential hunger, to teach us divine law, remind us of our sacred bond, and renew our failing faith. We had survived in exile for generations, absorbing foreign ways until many of us forgot our original path and why we were created. Ezra sought to anchor us back to our roots, showing us that obeying the divine was key to reclaiming the identity that once defined us. Under his guidance, we began to unite as one family again, gathering together to hear the ancient words that explained our existence. Then came Nehemiah, a servant of Persia, who burned with passion for our city, driving him to help us rebuild the broken physical boundaries of our home. He mobilized us to rebuild those protective walls in record time, creating a safe sanctuary where we could finally contemplate our future in peace. Led by Ezra and Nehemiah, our spirits began to awaken. Our broken, scattered nation was finally coming back to life, discovering its true calling. Yet we knew this was about more than bricks and mortar. It was a spiritual awakening as we returned to ancient promises and our ultimate purpose. We stood reminded of the cosmic order meant to guide us, urging us to align our daily lives with a higher destiny. Our new temple, though modest compared to Solomon's grandeur, stood as a beacon, reminding us that the Creator had not abandoned our journey. We felt His presence. When we celebrated the Feast of Tabernacles, we rejoiced together for the first time in ages, feeling a profound connection to the divine source of our being. But even amidst our joy, we knew our quest was far from finished. Reclaiming our true identity would be a lifelong climb. Though our city walls stood strong, our inner hearts still ached for healing. We were back on our soil, but our faith, the very root of our existence, needed slow, careful cultivation. It would be a long, generational search for meaning, yet a fresh spark of hope began to warm our weary land. The divine had not abandoned us. We were given a path to return, rebuild, and search once more for the purpose of our existence. Now, a future of peace and justice was within our grasp. Rebuilding Jerusalem was never just about masonry. It was about finding our place in the universe. It was the rekindling of our collective soul, a renewal of a timeless covenant that echoed across the vast centuries. It called to anyone searching for meaning, urging us to live in alignment with divine will. In that moment, we knew we were more than just survivors. We were the heirs of a timeless promise.
With every stone we laid and prayer we offered, we reclaimed our destiny. We were shaping a future for generations to come. As our city walls rose high, we looked ahead with hope. Our bitter exile had finally ended, but our true existential journey was only beginning, bringing a deep, quiet peace that only those who survived the long silence of exile could understand. Near the end of our sacred texts, a different voice emerges. The storms of war and conquest have finally passed. The prophets have gone silent. The temple is built, the city lived in. But now we begin to look inward, not shouting at the heavens, but whispering. We sit as individuals beneath the shade of olive trees, asking the ultimate question: why do we exist? This is our wisdom literature. These poetic sacred writings do not command or condemn us, they reflect. Here we find no mighty kings or burning bushes, no thunderous mountaintop declarations. Instead, we face the raw, unyielding riddle of our existence with open eyes, whispering these deep questions in the dark corners of our world. We ponder them in our quietest prayers, in our grief, and during late-night wonder under a starry sky. First comes Proverbs, our practical guide to life, speaking like a wise mentor who understands how the world works. It offers us sharp, bite-sized truths. Pride leads to ruin. Gentleness diffuses anger. Recognizing our place before the Creator is the starting point of understanding. In these verses, the formula for a meaningful life feels clear and reliable. Work hard, find success. Act justly, avoid disaster. Stay humble, avoid shame. But our journey is rarely that simple. Enter Job, a painful cry against this neat transactional view of human existence. He is the ultimate symbol of our struggle, a good man who does everything right, yet loses his family, health, and status in an instant. No easy answers can explain his pain. When his friends try to comfort him, they offer empty platitudes, claiming he must have brought this on himself. But Job rejects this simple cosmic arithmetic. He demands a real hearing, confronting the Creator directly, to ask the burning question we all share. Why do good people suffer while the wicked thrive? For 37 chapters, this existential tension builds to a boil. Job wrestles with raw despair and brutal honesty. Then the Creator answers from a massive whirlwind, not with neat explanations, but with an overwhelming sense of awe. Where were you when I built the cosmos? It is pure, blinding revelation. We realize our human categories are too small. The universe is vast, beautiful, and chaotic. Job is restored, but forever changed by the encounter. He found meaning not in answers, but in meeting the divine. Then we find Ecclesiastes, our ultimate skeptic, echoing like wind through empty, cold halls. It famously declares that everything is vanity. In Hebrew, the word is hevel, meaningless, smoke, mist, vapor, a fleeting breath. Why are we here if life is this short? Generations pass, empires fall, and nothing we build lasts. The ancient teacher tests our pleasures, achievements, and philosophies, finding them hollow. Yet in our search, he keeps a modest, quiet hope. Honor the Creator and keep the commandments, for this is our entire purpose, not for a guaranteed reward, but to find grounding when everything else is elusive. Ecclesiastes urges us not to despair, but to see our fragility clearly. Our lives are brief, uncertain, yet sacred. Next, the Psalms lay bare our collective soul. A collection of poetry, yes, but also our rawest cries of anguish, wonder, and praise, penned over centuries from grand palaces to dark hideouts. This is humanity crying out to the cosmos. Some songs shout with joy at the universe. Others weep in the dark, asking why we have been abandoned. Some demands for justice burn with rage. Others plead only for mercy. There are songs of ascent, sung as we journey upward seeking the divine. We sing to remember our history, to confess our failures, and to celebrate. These songs hold space for the entire messy spectrum of our human experience. This is raw, honest survival. You and I can see how these ancient writers did not just pray to a distant god, they wrestled, turning poetry into our ultimate lifeline. For our wandering species, these words became a portable sanctuary, keeping us connected to our purpose, even when our physical worlds lay in ruins. Then we hear a voice rarely spoken aloud, yet unforgettable. The Song of Songs, a passionate love poem, viewed by some as sacred allegory, by others as pure desire. It exalts our passion instead of hiding it. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. It defiantly claims that our human capacity for love is profoundly sacred. Our physical desire, the deep longing of our bodies and souls, belongs in the sacred. Some see it as a metaphor for divine love. Others take it literally, finding in its verses the ultimate human joy of intimacy, affection, and deep connection. The holiness of connection. Together, these writings form our spiritual core. They are not the history of empires, but the intimate songs of individual seekers. They do not try to conquer the world, but to make sense of it. They speak across millennia because every human eventually faces this exact same search. Loss, longing, injustice, and aching hope. These pages do not promise control over life. They offer us perspective. They are our final pause before history rushes forward again. Before empires rise, before Rome conquers, and before the next stage of our search begins. But for a moment, the dust settles, and our ultimate questions remain. They are not answered, but they are made noble simply by being asked. Here, you and I are not told what to think. We are invited to reflect deeply, to live attentively, and to feel honestly. We cry out in quiet whispers, wrestling with the dark until dawn breaks. The curtain closes on this ancient era, and the pages of our history turn. The echoes of ancient prophecies fade. We stand on the precipice of massive change, having tracked our collective journey, from creation to exile, from glory to total ruin. But our story is far from finished. We are simply waiting. There is a heavy, profound silence filled with the tension of what we will discover next. For even though our ancestors returned to their homeland, the quiet centuries before the next great era are charged with our deepest human anticipation. Our world shifted. The power of Babylon fell, replaced by Persia, whose king allowed our ancestors to finally return. They rebuilt their sanctuary, their city, and their broken identity. Yet this return did not restore the fullness of our original glory. The new temple lacked its ancient grandeur. The restored walls did not bring back our former strength. We were home, but still searching for our true purpose. Weary and scattered, we sought renewal, but felt a lingering emptiness. As we rebuilt, the memory of what we lost weighed heavily on our souls. The golden age of a united kingdom, once defining our existence, now felt like a distant dream. We were back in the land, but we were no longer a unified people. The old divisions between North and South still fractured our fragile identity. These tensions between our past and present shaped who we were, fueling a deep, aching yearning for something more. The divine prophets had long since faded, leaving only whispers behind. Yet their words remained etched in our hearts as we searched for answers. The promise of a Redeemer to restore our purpose still stirred our souls. This cosmic silence was not defeat. It was the tense breath of expectation. We waited for answers for the one who would bring peace and define our existence, even as we lived through centuries of silent foreign oppression. First came the Persians, then the Greeks, and finally the Romans. Our old way of life was gone forever. Strangers ruled our land, Yet our burning desire for freedom and our ultimate purpose only grew brighter in the dark. Prophetic promises hung in the air like a half-forgotten song, waiting for someone to sing it. This quiet was a time of deep internal wrestling for us. We struggled to understand who we were in this changing world. Were we a kingdom, a nation, or was our existence meant for something greater? We no longer had a king on the throne, yet the ancient promise remained. Our temple no longer glowed with divine presence, yet we still sought it. Yet our sacred covenant remained. This quiet was not just a lack of answers, but our deep, aching question, why are we here, and what comes next? We turned to the ancient writings, seeking wisdom in the poetry and proverbs left by those before us. We found solace in the past, but new questions haunted us. What does it truly mean to live faithfully in a world that has changed so drastically? How do we keep waiting for a savior when centuries pass and our ultimate hope feels like a mirage? Yet, in this quiet, we still search. Our search for meaning never stopped. Job and Ecclesiastes offered us profound reflections on our suffering, our fragile lives, and our endless pursuit of wisdom. You and I are still asking these exact same questions. Why must we suffer? What is the meaning of life? What is the ultimate purpose of our toil?
These existential questions aren't easily answered, but they show our search for meaning growing deeper. We began to look beyond just the raw survival of our tribes and nations. We started wrestling with the brutal realities of suffering, yearning for a purpose far greater than ourselves. We longed for something beyond what we could touch. As heaven went silent, our relationship with the world shifted, forcing us to look past our physical kingdoms and borders. Once we relied on physical kings and temples, but even when scattered, conquered, and broken, our search for who we are and why we exist survived the ruins. We realized our purpose was never tied to a physical building or ruler, but to an ancient promise, something deeper that transcends time, space, and our mortal limits. This stubborn hope, this quiet belief that our existence has a divine purpose, sustained us through centuries of silence. The stories of our ancestors, our moral laws, the wisdom of our songs, and the cries of our prophets remained alive in our collective heart. This burning trust would carry us through the coming storm. But this impending storm would not be fought with swords, conquering armies, or political schemes. It was not about the rise and fall of another human empire. This coming storm would be a quiet, internal shift that would rewrite human history forever. Our long-awaited answer would begin not with a thunderous roar, but with a newborn baby crying in a humble manger, the ultimate promise to our search. The Savior of our restless souls would arrive, reclaiming our true home, not with weapons, but with a message of peace and healing. Not a war, but a total transformation of what it means to be human. Our search falls into a quiet pause, but a silence heavy with hope. The pages of our history are turning, and we wait desperately, longing for the promises to be met. The ancient echoes of hope still ring in our ears, faint but persistent. As the curtain falls on this act, we hold our breath, waiting for the next chapter of our story to unfold. This heavy silence is not our end, but the quiet moment before a brand new beginning. We have survived wars, exile, and the loss of everything we built. Yet here we are, still standing, still searching, still waiting. This sacred history has shaped us, but our story is not finished. We are waiting for something far grander, an answer to our existence that will change the world. The long road of our creation, our mistakes, our exile, and our struggle to return has laid the foundation for what comes next. But we are not quite ready. A final chapter must still be written to tie together all the threads of our laws, our wisdom, and our history. And in this breathless wait, our past prepares the stage for a new narrative. The answer to why we exist is finally coming, and our world will never be the same.